Germany of Iron and Blood. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401, Confidence to Win. General Washington's order. His Excellency the President personally sent it. Admiral Fletcher's secretary sent the telegram to him. Admiral Fletcher took the telegram and read it quickly. It's time to end this farce. Admiral Fletcher sighed. Indeed, in his opinion, this is simply a farce. All the elite forces of the US Navy were mobilized just to give an explanation to the domestic people. This is undoubtedly difficult for these admirals to accept. As a soldier, their bounden duty is to fight for the benefit of the country. But now, they are acting like clowns. This is undoubtedly very distressing. However, Admiral Fletcher can also understand President Woodrow Wilson's choice, who made the current US Navy so weak. Although, their navy is already considered a world-class powerful navy. However, in front of the German Navy, it undoubtedly appeared very weak. If they start a war now, they have no chance of winning at all. In order to preserve strength, this had no choice but to retreat. Command the fleet to prepare to retreat. After 20 minutes, start turning. Admiral Fletcher ordered. Yes, General. The staff officer couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief after hearing that Admiral Fletcher had finally issued such an order. Obviously, within the US Navy, those officers were unwilling to really fight the German Navy, because they know that there is no chance of winning at all. The German Navy broke through the fleet and has always been vigilant against the US fleet. Naturally, the changes of the US fleet cannot be hidden from them. General, there is a change in the Americans, a staff officer said. What? Lieutenant General Spee immediately grabbed the binoculars and looked at the US fleet. But then he breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, he thought that the Americans wanted to make a dangerous move and launched an attack on them. But now it seems that the Americans don't seem to have this meaning. Don't worry, the Americans seem to be unable to hold on and are about to retreat. We still won this battle. Lieutenant General Spee smiled. Indeed, in this confrontation, Germany still won. After all, the Americans are not Germany's opponents, and they dare not continue the confrontation like this. He didn't even have the courage to help the British hold back part of the German Navy. Not dare. Lieutenant General Spee can also understand. After all, if the Americans really did that, once the main force of the German Navy has eliminated the Royal Navy, the next target to attack must be the US Navy. With such little strength of the US Navy, it simply cannot withstand the attack of the German Navy. Report to the country. Lieutenant General Spee ordered. Yes, General. The staff officer immediately went to send a telegram. When Qin Tian, Marshal Count Tirpitz and others received the news of the retreat of the American fleet, they couldn't help laughing. His Royal Highness, it seems that the Americans have made their choice. The British have been abandoned. Therefore, we only need to deal with the British, Marshal Count Tirpitz said with a smile. However, there was obvious regret on his face. Qin Tian knew that Marshal Earl Tirpitz was regretting that the Americans had no courage to fight the German Navy. In that case, maybe they will be able to achieve greater results. Your Excellency Marshal, although we have no chance to fight the Americans this time, we will definitely have a chance to beat them down next time. The Americans will not just sit and watch the Empire become the world's hegemon. The Empire launched a challenge. Similarly, if the Empire's world dominance wants to be stable, it must suppress the United States. Therefore, the contradiction between our two countries is irreconcilable. In the future, we will inevitably have a war. Moreover, the scale of future wars may be larger than the present one, Qin Tian said. Your Highness, I believe that under your leadership, the Empire will be able to win the final victory. Even the Americans are absolutely impossible to resist the advance of the Empire. Marshal Count Tirpitz said to Qin Tian, I'm very confident. Qin Tian nodded. Although Marshal Earl Tirpitz had great confidence in him, the key point was that he didn't have that much confidence in himself. Although he is the crown prince of the Empire, the future heir to the throne of the Empire. However, Qin Tian knew very well that William II lived a very long life. If it is not possible, after the next war, William II will still sit on the throne of the emperor. And he is still the crown prince of the empire. Your Excellency Marshal, now that the Americans have retreated, the Navy's plan against the British can begin to be implemented. I believe that after the Americans retreat, no one in our no-fly zone will dare to challenge again. The British people are blocked. It will be something that no one can change. Perhaps the British can't help themselves and want to fight us. In that case, our chances of winning will be much greater. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Royal Highness. There are only two ways for the British to die now. One is to be surrounded and dragged to death by our blockade. The other is to fight us at all costs and try to reverse the situation. However, with such a large gap in strength, the final outcome is still doomed. Marshal Earl Tirpitz seemed very confident about the future war. Qin Tian nodded. According to the information they have received now, the number of capital ships of the British Navy has been completely suppressed by the Imperial Navy. The existing capital ships of the British Navy include 5 Revenge-class battleships, 5 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, 1 King George V-class battleships, 4 Orion-class battleships, and 2 Giants-class battleships, 1 Neptune battleship, 4 Street. Although in terms of number, there are 2 more battleships than the German Navy. But in terms of performance, I'm afraid there is nothing comparable. Especially the first 11 ships are all battleships equipped with 305mm main guns. The German Navy has only 4 battleships equipped with 305mm main guns. In terms of battle cruisers, the British Navy has only 1 Tiger battle cruiser, 2 Lion-class battle cruisers, 1 Indefatigable-class battle cruiser and 2 Invincible-class battle cruisers. There are only 6 ships, equivalent to half of the battle cruisers of the German Navy. Moreover, its performance was completely suppressed by the German Navy. Therefore, no matter how you look at it, the Royal Navy has no chance of winning. What's more, the German Navy also has a powerful submarine force and aircraft carriers to assist in the battle, which will make them have a higher chance of winning. Chapter 402, Crisis of Empire. The war crisis between the United States and Germany was resolved so easily, which left everyone in the country stunned. Especially the British, who had great expectations for the United States, were even more disappointed. Originally, they were waiting for the further intensification of the conflict between Germany and the United States and the outbreak of war. In that case, the pressure on Britain would be much less. Even some people in the Royal Navy believe that if the Royal Navy and the US Navy act together, it is not the performance of the German Navy is undoubtedly impossible to defeat the German Navy very good. Among the warships of the same level, the Royal Navy cannot compare with it. However, if the numerical advantage is large enough, they are not without a chance of winning. But unfortunately, in the end the Americans retreated directly. In the face of the great strength shown by the German Navy, the Americans were terrified, worried about being defeated, and retreated directly. This has undoubtedly made the current situation in the UK even worse. The Americans stopped attacking the no-fly zone designated by Germany, which undoubtedly shows that they have acquired in the behavior of the Germans. Even the Americans have acquired. Do other countries have other options? It is foreseeable that Britain's overseas trade will be cut off as a result, unless the British are willing to risk huge losses and use their own merchant ships to continue transporting various supplies. Otherwise, Britain will not get any supplies. What kind of consequences this will have can naturally be imagined. It will be very easy for the Germans to defeat Britain, or even do nothing, just keep besieging Britain. At that time, Britain itself will collapse. Prime Minister Asquith has been in a very bad mood these 2 days. The current situation is undoubtedly very critical for Britain. Even Prime Minister Asquith believed that the British Empire might not be able to pass this hurdle. No one thought that Germany would be so powerful that it would push the mighty British Empire to this point within only half a year since the war started. In view of the current situation, King George V summoned Prime Minister Asquith and asked him about the situation of the war. Throughout the conversation, King George V of England was very pessimistic about the current war situation. Obviously, His Majesty the King, who has just ascended the throne not long ago, no longer has much confidence in defeating Germany. Although, Prime Minister Asquith kept reassuring King George V that the British Empire was far from reaching its end, and they still had enough strength to continue fighting. But apparently, King George V didn't believe that much at all. Even Prime Minister Asquith felt that his guarantee was so feeble. After returning from Buckingham Palace, Prime Minister Asquith immediately called a cabinet meeting. "Gentlemen, what should we do now? The Americans have retreated. It is impossible to expect them to join the war and help us defeat the Germans. Next, what should we do?" Asquith asked the Prime Minister. "Your Excellency, this is too unbelievable. The Germans seized so many merchant ships from the Americans and even killed many American civilians, but the Americans dare not even fart. Sent the fleet to sea, just made a show, and then fled back. Are they still a powerful country in the world?" Sir Edward Grey, the Foreign Secretary, shook his head helplessly, obviously disappointed with the actions of the US government. After all, the Americans have not fought any major battles. They have strong industrial strength, but their military strength is in a mess. It is understandable that the Germans retreated after being so frightened. Secretary of the Navy Churchill said, "Did we scare them by notifying them that the main force of the German Navy was out?" asked Lloyd George, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. "Of course not. Even if we don't inform them, with their own intelligence capabilities, the Americans will know soon. At that time, they may still complain about why we didn't inform them, which will affect our possible cooperation. It's just that I didn't expect Americans to be so timid and to be scared so easily." Churchill's face was also full of helplessness. In Churchill's view, the United States is now the only country that can help them out of their predicament. However, the Americans are now retreating, which undoubtedly directly shows that they have no foreign aid. Next, they had to deal with the Germans on their own, and their own strength is really choking everyone. The Americans have retreated, so it is useless to talk about this now. The most critical question is, what should we do now? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Indeed, the question before everyone is undoubtedly what to do next. These cabinet ministers are undoubtedly very shrewd. Otherwise, they would not have had the chance to get to this point. The current situation is indeed very bad for the British Empire. Although it is not that there is no chance of winning at all, what they have to admit is that the chance of winning is very slim. Mr. Churchill, without the help of the Americans, is the Royal Navy not at all sure of defeating the Germans? Prime Minister Asquith asked. All eyes were on Churchill, who made the Royal Navy always the pillar of the British Empire. The hegemony of the British Empire has always been based on the strength of the Royal Navy. Without a powerful Royal Navy, the hegemony of the British Empire is like a rootless tree. Your Excellency, with the current strength of the Royal Navy, it is very difficult to defeat the Germans. All of our battleships add up, and there are 26 ships, 2 more than the Germans. All of our battle cruisers add up, and 6 ships, 6 fewer than the Germans. What's more, our cutting-edge warships are so small that they cannot be compared with the Germans. I believe that everyone is already very clear about the performance of German warships. Therefore, needless to say, I can tell you frankly that, unless the Germans made an unforgivable mistake in the naval battle, in other words, our luck is overwhelming. Otherwise, we have no chance of winning at all, said Churchill. Churchill's words, like a basin of ice water, made the hearts of these ministers in the British cabinet poured cold. Everyone can understand what Churchill means. That is, the Royal Navy has almost no chance of winning. Such a result is naturally a bad news for everyone. It can be said that from now on, the British Empire will face the biggest life and death crisis in hundreds of years. Chapter 403, War or Peace. Your Excellency Churchill, don't we have no chance at all? Asked Sir Edward Grey, the Foreign Secretary. Churchill's answer made everyone feel heavy. They naturally didn't want the British Empire, which had dominated the world for hundreds of years, to decline in their hands. Although, judging from the current situation, this seems to be inevitable, unless we can delay the decisive battle with the Germans until our subsequent battleships serve. At that time, we will have a better chance of winning. However, the Germans obviously will not give us so much time, said Churchill. In the Royal Navy's shipbuilding plan, construction of subsequent battleships has already started. including the new Iron Duke class battleship, the new King George V class battleship and the Lion class battleship, a total of 12 ships. There are also 3 tiers of 10 battle cruisers, 3 Prestige class battle cruisers, 3 Glory class battle cruisers, and 4 Hood class battle cruisers. Among them, the caliber of the main guns of the Lion class battleship and the Hood class battle cruiser has been increased to 406mm. In terms of defense, it has also been greatly improved compared to the previous warships. It is precisely because of this that the Royal Navy has placed great hopes on these cutting-edge warships. However, distant water cannot quench mere thirst. Even with overtime, it will take at least the middle or even the end of 1916 before these warships will enter service one after another. This is still under the condition that various resources can be guaranteed. Now, the Germans have completed the blockade of the United Kingdom, and even the Americans have retreated in front of the Germans' no-flight zone, which undoubtedly makes it difficult for the United Kingdom to obtain resources from abroad. Without the support of external resources, it will be very difficult for the British Navy to rely on local resources to build those warships. More importantly, the German Navy obviously could not wait until 1916. Judging from the various information obtained so far, the German Navy is expected to do it this year. Therefore, the time left for the British Navy is running out. Your Excellency, the Prime Minister, if the war situation is really not good for us, can we make peace with the Germans? In that case, we may be able to minimize losses. Lloyd George, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, suggested. In the British cabinet, the vast majority of people were originally from the main combat faction with a firm stand. However, as the situation of the war became more and more unfavorable to them, the German army was winning on the battlefield. Whether it is the German army or navy, they have already gained an advantage. At least from the current situation, the British Empire's chances of winning are not great. This also made some cabinet ministers start to have other considerations. Peace. This is undoubtedly an extremely heavy topic for the ministers of the British cabinet. The British Empire is the overlord of the world. As the rulers of the empire, they have always held their heads proudly and pointed their nostrils at people. Now, they are actually asked to bow their noble heads to the Germans and pray for peace, which naturally makes them unacceptable. Impossible. The British Empire must not seek peace with the Germans. The Germans are very ambitious. Unless we give up all overseas colonies and interests, otherwise, they will never let us go easily. Churchill shook his head. Yes. This time, the Germans originally wanted to use war to pull us down from the throne of the world hegemony. If this goal is not achieved, they will never give up. Minister of War Richard Haldane said. Maybe we can get in touch with the Germans. If the Germans' appetite is not so big, we can pay a certain price and end this war. In this way, we may be able to pay less losses. Sir Edward Grey, the Foreign Secretary, also said, in the case of not being able to beat the Germans, seeking peace is undoubtedly the best way. Prime Minister Asquith couldn't help being a little moved. Although, seeking peace from the Germans is a bit embarrassing. More importantly, the world dominance of the British Empire may also be lost as a result. The Germans will inevitably take advantage of this opportunity to blackmail them severely. But at least this war can be brought to an end. Prime Minister Asquith worried that, if the war was lost, they would lose even worse. Gentlemen, if we do make peace with the Germans, how much appetite will they have? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Your Excellency, the Germans have been coveting our overseas colonies for a long time. I think if we ask for peace, they will definitely open their mouths in this regard. The colonies of India, Australia, and Africa may not be kept. Canada, it is estimated that the Americans will strongly oppose it, so it can be retained. I'm afraid that the rest of the colonies will have to be lost. In addition, the appetite of the Germans will not be so small in terms of war reparations. They are on the Russians, all extorted 10 billion marks in war reparations. If they faced us, their demands would probably be several times that amount. After all, in the eyes of the Germans, we are much richer than the Russians, said Churchill. Prime Minister Asquith's complexion suddenly became ugly. The colonial system painstakingly maintained by the British Empire is undoubtedly their lifeblood and the basis for Britain to continue to be strong. Without the vast colonies as their market and source of raw materials, British industry would have suffered a fatal blow. At the same time, it is also because there are vast colonies that can be exploited that this allows Britain to maintain a strong military strength. Otherwise, only the hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of the British mainland. How could it be possible to support a world-class hegemony power? Among the many British colonies, India is undoubtedly the top priority. Britain can obtain huge wealth from India every year. It is for this reason that India is known as the brightest jewel in the crown of the British king. If those colonies are lost, Britain will be completely over and will only be reduced to a second-rate country. What's more, the huge war operations are also unbearable for Britain. Although Britain has accumulated a lot of wealth in the past, the war in the past 6 months has already consumed a lot of wealth. If they are burdened with huge war operations, it will be unbearable for them. This also made Prime Minister Asquith very entangled. It was also difficult for him to make a decision on how to choose. Similarly, other British cabinet ministers are equally entangled. Chapter 404. Ready with both hands. Everyone, let's stop here for today's meeting. Regarding your suggestions, I will carefully consider them. Prime Minister Asquith said with a tired face. It is obviously impossible to make a decision at once on such a major decision related to the destiny of the country. Especially the current situation is very unfavorable to them, and it is very likely that they will lose the war. Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister. The other cabinet members said one after another, and then everyone got up and prepared to leave. Churchill and Edward stay. Prime Minister Asquith said. Secretary of the Navy Winston Churchill and Foreign Secretary Sir Edward Grey, Lang, then nodded. They knew that Prime Minister Asquith had specially kept them, so he must have something important to discuss with them. After everyone left, Prime Minister Asquith, Churchill and Sir Edward Grey also left the conference room and went directly to the Prime Minister's office. If we seek peace with the Germans, how likely is it to preserve the fundamental interests of the British Empire? Prime Minister Asquith asked directly. Both Churchill and Sir Edward Grey knew that, if the conditions of the Germans were not too harsh, Prime Minister Asquith might really seek peace. After all, the odds of winning this war are already very small, and even, they have a great possibility of losing the war. Once the war is lost, the British Empire is completely over. It's better to seek peace now. In this case, you may be able to pay a little less loss. As for the fundamental interests of the British Empire, apart from the mainland, I'm afraid that India is the only one. In other words, if the British Empire loses other places in the war, even if only the mainland and India are left, then they can still recover their strength quickly and become a powerful country. India has a large population and abundant resources. More importantly, those Indians have been tamed by the British. Therefore, they can exploit and oppress India at will and plunder huge amounts of wealth from India. However, if it is changed to other places, I'm afraid it will not work. It's just that everyone knows the wealth of India and the nature of Indians, which makes all countries salivate at India. If it is said that, because of the strength of the British Empire before, everyone did not dare to act rashly. So, after Germany puts the UK down this time, will it leave India to the UK again, so that they have a chance to rise again? That is obviously impossible, Your Excellency Prime Minister. We may not be able to keep India. The Germans will definitely ask us to cede India to them. Even all the overseas colonies will not be left much. The appetite of the Germans may be greater than we imagined. Isn't it for our overseas colonies to deliberately challenge our hegemony? Sir Edward Grey said. Prime Minister Asquith nodded. If it were him, I'm afraid that he would not hesitate to take India away from Britain. Without India, the foundation of Britain has undoubtedly been shaken. It is impossible to pose a threat to Germany in the future. After all, we have not lost the war. Although the Germans have gained an advantage, they have not won after all. If we negotiate with them, it may be possible to keep India. Prime Minister Asquith said. Sir Edward Grey nodded, but he had to admit that this possibility is really very small. Then, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should contact the Germans. If they agree to the truce, the British Empire can give them all the colonies in Africa and the Middle East. In addition, in terms of war operations, you can also give them £100 million. The conditions are not bad. If the Germans can agree, it will be very beneficial to them. Prime Minister Asquith said. although the price paid is not small. However, for the United Kingdom, this is not yet a traumatic loss. As long as they develop their minds for a period of time, their national strength will be restored, and they will have the strength to confront Germany again. Yes, Your Excellency, I will arrange it, Sir Edward Grey said. Prime Minister Asquith nodded and looked at Churchill. If we let go and fight the Germans, what are our chances of winning? Prime Minister Asquith asked, although, in his heart, he is already inclined to negotiate peace with the Germans. However, for the victory, he still did not give up. If you can win, it is naturally the best. In that case, the British Empire would not only be able to keep these existing interests, but at the same time, be able to ruthlessly slaughter the Germans, and cut off a large piece of fat. The losses paid during the war can almost be made up for. Of course, Prime Minister Asquith also knew that the chances of winning were very small. The Prime Minister said that it is very difficult to defeat the Germans now, unless, in the naval battle, God is on our side. Otherwise, it will be difficult for us to defeat them. The design ideas of our warships, a fundamental mistake has occurred, which has made our warships far inferior to the Germans in terms of performance. This has led to a great possibility that we will be at a disadvantage in naval battles. Of course, there are many factors that determine the outcome of a naval battle, not only just that. For example, if we get lucky in a naval battle, we also have a chance of winning, Churchill explained. Prime Minister Asquith although nodded. Churchill did not say it clearly. He knew that in reality, the chances of the British Navy winning were very small. So much so that Churchill could only place his hopes on illusory luck. It is obviously unrealistic to expect Britain to have better luck in naval battles and thus defeat the German Navy. If we lose the war, the British Empire will be completely over, Prime Minister Asquith said. Yes, Your Excellency Prime Minister. If we lose the war, then we will have to agree to the harshest conditions of the Germans, and even let the Germans slaughter them. If we refuse them, the Germans will even land on our homeland and let the Germans the whole country is caught in the flames of war. At that time, our country will be destroyed, Churchill said. Prime Minister Asquith's complexion couldn't help but become even uglier. As the Prime Minister of the British Empire, the actual leader of the country, he certainly does not want to see such a day. Edward, I authorize you to negotiate with the Germans. If the conditions of the Germans are not harsh, then end the war, Prime Minister Asquith said. Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister. Sir Edward Grey nodded. Churchill, if diplomatic negotiations fail, then the only way we can go is war. Prime Minister Asquith continued. Your Excellency, Prime Minister, I will do my best to win. Churchill said. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405, Armistice Conditions. Ha ha ha. Have the proud British finally decided to lower their noble heads? William II's face was full of smiles, and his complexion was also very good, flushed. It is undoubtedly a matter of pride for William II to be able to make the former British Empire compromise and seek peace. After all, he has always set his goal of pulling Britain down from the throne of the world's hegemony. Originally, he thought that this goal might never be realized. However, it now appears that the realization of this goal is simply too simple. The British are so strong outsiders. The other top executives in Germany also had smiles on their faces. Being able to push Britain to this extent is undoubtedly a great victory for them. You know, that's the British Empire, the former world overlord. They have the largest and most numerous colonies in the world. Their fleets are cruising in the oceans all over the world, shocking the whole world. However, the war has only started for half a year, and the British are about to be overthrown by them. This result surprised and delighted the top German officials. Qin Tian was also in a good mood. The British took the initiative to ask for peace, which undoubtedly showed that they were about to fail. For Germany, this is undoubtedly a good thing. Of course, Qin Tian did not advocate peace talks with the British. After all, no matter how much you negotiate, the benefits you will get are extremely limited before you really defeat Britain. Only when the German Navy defeated the British Navy, the German army landed on the British mainland. At that time, the Britain will be really afraid and will be slaughtered by Germany like a weak sheep. Although Britain and Germany are at war, the ambassadors of both sides have already returned home, and the diplomatic channel of direct communication has been interrupted. However, this does not mean that the two countries cannot be contacted. When the two countries have their own embassies in other neutral countries, and they can completely send messages through these embassies, so as to ensure that the negotiations between the two parties can continue. This time, the British government communicated with Germany through the embassy in Switzerland. The British expressed their willingness to end the war, and claimed that, if Germany was willing to cease the war, Britain could pay enough and so on. It was precisely because of this move by the British that William II was very satisfied. After all, apart from Germany, there is probably no other country that can make the British Empire so humble. Everyone, should we accept the British proposal? William II asked. Your Majesty, the British should be very sincere this time. No, if we want to fully realize our intended goal, I'm afraid we still need to defeat the British to get what we want. Otherwise, the British people will never agree to our terms, said Foreign Minister von Kiedrenwachter. Yes, Your Majesty. At this juncture, the British must have no chance of winning the future war, so they asked us for peace. Otherwise, with the British way of doing things, it would be impossible to ask for peace. Rather than negotiating with the British, it is better to completely defeat the British through war. Only in this way can we get more and slaughter the British wantonly. Imperial Prime Minister Bernhard von Gillow also said, the government is obviously not willing to negotiate peace with the British at this time. As for the military, even if William II didn't ask, he knew that they wanted to continue the war. Those guys are a war madman, wishing that the war would last as long as possible. King William II looked at Qin Tian, wanting to ask his opinion. Oscar, what do you think? William II asked. Father, my opinion is the same as that of the ministers. The reason why the British asked us for peace was completely out of necessity. They also knew that, if the war continued, they might have no chance of winning. In order to avoid, after losing a complete defeat, and being slaughtered by us, they planned to ask us for peace, in the hope that in this way, they can pay less losses. However, such words are obviously not in our interests. Our goal is to want in this war, Britain will be completely defeated. Not only must we asterisk the status of world hegemony from the British, at the same time, we also need to eliminate the threat to us from the British. Therefore, we must do our best slaughtering the British. In the negotiation, it is obviously impossible to obtain those benefits. Therefore, I think the war still needs to continue and strive to completely defeat the British. Qin Tian said. William II nodded. So, are we going to reject the British this time? Father, that's not necessary. However, we can put forward some conditions that the British cannot accept. At that time, they will naturally retreat in spite of the difficulties. Qin Tian said with a smile. Well, you will be responsible for this matter. William II said. As Qin Tian grows older, although Qin Tian is still very young, however, it has become more and more mature and sophisticated in dealing with national affairs and international relations. In this regard, William II also completely trusted Qin Tian and was willing to let Qin Tian display his talent. Yes, father. Qin Tian accepted the task without hesitation. After the meeting, Qin Tian discussed with Foreign Minister von Kiedrenwachter and listed several conditions that the Britain could not accept. These conditions not only include land cession and indemnity, but also limit Britain's military power, unless the minds of the British are caught by the door. Otherwise, they will never accept such conditions. In terms of land cession, Qin Tian demanded that Britain hand over all its colonies to Germany. In addition, the independence of Ireland is allowed, and the independence movement of the island of Ireland has always been supported by Germany. In terms of compensation, Qin Tian directly opened his mouth, asking Britain to compensate Germany for the loss of 50 billion marks. If converted into pounds, this huge sum is already equivalent to 2 billion pounds. Britain, which suffered heavy losses during the war, simply could not afford so much money, and it was impossible to spend so much money for compensation. Finally, Qin Tian also asked for restrictions on Britain's military power. Britain was no longer allowed to build warships with a greater displacement than 10,000 tons, and it was forbidden to own submarines and aircraft. The existing warships with a displacement of more than 10,000 tons, as well as the warships under construction, must be transferred to Germany. Only then will Germany grant peace to England. Chapter 406. Fight to the death. Bastard. It's disgusting and arrogant. The Germans actually put forward such a condition. Do they think that we have lost the war? Their army has already occupied the whole of Britain, so we can only let them kill us? As Prime Minister Quis roared angrily. When the conditions put forward by Germany were sent to Prime Minister Asquith, he completely extinguished his desire for peace. In his view, the German side has no sincerity at all. It is completely to slaughter Britain as a defeated country. If they accepted the conditions offered by the Germans, the British Empire would really die without a place to die. In the future, the British Empire will not only no longer be the hegemon of the world, but it will not even be considered a powerful country. It will be completely reduced to a second and third-rate country. How could Prime Minister Asquith agree to such a condition? Your Excellency, the conditions put forward by the Germans are indeed very harsh. It is impossible for us to accept such conditions. Therefore, the Germans really have no idea of peace talks with them. They are very confident in their military power, intends to defeat us directly with powerful military force. Sir Edward Grey also had a dejected expression on his face. He could vaguely feel that the Germans closed the door to the peace talks, probably because they wanted to make Britain pay a higher price. Once Britain loses the war, they are completely finished. Prime Minister Asquith nodded. From now on, no one is allowed to talk about peace talks with the Germans. We have no choice but to continue the war. Unless we can defeat the Germans, or at least be able to withstand the German attack. Otherwise, the British Empire will have no future. Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister. All the British cabinet ministers said. Through this contact with Germany, they also know that it is impossible to keep the British Empire through peace talks. In this case, there is only the last way left, and that is war. Your Excellency Churchill, the Royal Navy must be prepared for a decisive battle with the Germans. If the Royal Navy can win the decisive battle, the crisis of the British Empire can be lifted. If the Royal Navy cannot win, then our mainland will have to ready to fight the German landings, Prime Minister Asquith said. Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister. Churchill nodded. He knew that the task of the Royal Navy was very heavy now, and whether they could withstand the German attack was directly related to the life and death of the British Empire. He also promised that he would do his best to win this war. However, he didn't dare to guarantee whether he could win. After all, the opponent this time is really too strong. Your Excellency, Minister of War. Next, the army must be fully mobilized. Not only must the strength of the expeditionary force be maximized, but at the same time, the homeland must also have enough troops to defend. If the navy is not able to withstand the German attack, then everything it depends on the army. Prime Minister Asquith said solemnly. He knew that once the flames of war reached the mainland of Britain, it would bring disaster to Britain and even all the British people. However, the Germans were unwilling to engage in peace talks. This also left them with no other choice but to prepare for the battle with all their strength. If you want to keep Britain from perishing, you have to resist the German attack. Even if the war is carried out on the mainland, the Germans must be resisted. Otherwise, Britain will be completely finished. Yes, Your Excellency Prime Minister. The army has already planned to mobilize the third batch. At that time, in addition to the expeditionary force sent to France will increase to 1 million, there will be an army of 1.5 million in the mainland. If there is enough time, we will carry out the fourth batch of mobilization. In that case, our troop strength will be further improved. Richard Haldane, Secretary of State for War, said. Yes. Prime Minister Asquith nodded with satisfaction. However, in addition to the further expansion of the army's strength, the innovation of weaponry and equipment must also hurry up. Before the German army landed on the mainland of the empire before that, we developed equipment capable of restraining German tanks and other advanced weapons. Otherwise, our homeland may not be able to defend. German tanks shined brilliantly on the Eastern Front, and they beat Russian people are in a panic. According to the information obtained, the Germans will also deploy a large number of tank troops on the Western Front this time. We must be prepared. I hope that, once the war is carried out on the mainland of the Empire, we will fight to fight the land is scorched, and the Germans must be defeated. Yes, Your Excellency Prime Minister. Regarding the tanks used by the Germans, we have already started to develop them. The arsenal has produced samples. After demonstration, they will be mass produced. In addition, we are also developing tanks that can destroy the Germans. Tank weapons. After research, it was found that small caliber cannons can be directly used as anti-tank guns and have great lethality against German tanks. If the German army dares to land on the British mainland, we can definitely let them in bloody shed here. Richard Haldane looked resolute. For the British, if the navy fails, then only the army is left to defend the homeland. If the army has not been able to withstand the British attack during the Home War, the demise of Great Britain, then, was inevitable. Naturally, everyone does not want the UK to go to that point. But whenever possible, they all hope that the British Empire can continue to exist. Very well, everyone. I believe that with the concerted efforts of everyone, the British Empire will be able to overcome this difficulty and win the final victory. Prime Minister Asquith said. Although, the current situation is very critical. However, fortunately, everyone has not completely lost their fighting spirit. And this gave Britain a glimmer of hope of winning. Prime Minister Asquith couldn't help feeling a little more hopeful. Perhaps, God can bless the British Empire and win this war. Subsequently, Prime Minister Asquith rushed to Buckingham Palace to report the situation to King George V. Although King George V was full of worries about the future of the British Empire, he also expressed support for Prime Minister Asquith's decisive battle with them. King George V claimed that the royal family will do everything possible to support the government and the army. After all, if Britain ceased to exist, he, the king, would naturally not be able to continue to be king. Chapter 407, The Future of the Navy. Wilhelmshaven, the headquarters of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet. The current German Navy can be described as strong and strong. The strength of the High Seas Fleet has reached its peak. 24 advanced battleships, plus 12 advanced battle cruisers, brought the total number of capital ships of the German Navy to 36. That's still not counting those pre-dreadnoughts. If the former dreadnoughts are counted, the total number of capital ships of the German Navy will reach 60. Of course, those pre-dreadnought ships are not very useful in naval battles, which is already recognized. If the number of pre-dreadnought ships is to be counted among the capital ships, the British Navy has an absolute advantage. After all, Britain built dozens of pre-dreadnought ships before the war. It's just that the combat power of those former dreadnoughts is very rubbish. Once on the battlefield, they can only be slaughtered. Even for the sake of the lives of the sailors, these former dreadnoughts cannot be easily sent to the battlefield. German Navy High Seas Fleet Commander Reinhard Scheer Admiral is with the Fleet Chief of Staff Franz von Hipper Lieutenant General Torque. Sitting in the office, the two were filled with emotion as they watched the warships in the port. General Hipper, I really didn't expect it. In just over 10 years, our Navy has developed to the point it is now. Purely in terms of strength, we have surpassed the United Kingdom and become the veritable #1 Navy. A naval power. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Catching up with the Royal Navy has always been their goal, although the decisive battle has not yet begun. However, this goal appears to have been achieved ahead of schedule. Admiral Reinhard Scheer also believed that, even if the decisive battle broke out now, they would still be sure to defeat the British. Yes, this is thanks to the wise leadership of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. If it weren't for His Royal Highness, and relying on the guys from the Naval Technical Committee to develop step by step, we would not be able to surpass the British even if we died. Fran Lieutenant General Z von Hipper highly praised Qin Tian. There are countless people similar to Lieutenant General Hipper in the German Navy. It can be said that with his own ability, Qin Tian already has a lot of die-hard supporters in the Navy. Admiral Reinhard Scheer nodded. He was also very convinced of Qin Tian. However, we have stopped building new capital ships since the Bavaria-class battleships and the Mackensen-class battle cruisers. If this continues, can our advantage be maintained? According to the information we have obtained, the British people are frantically building new capital ships. The Americans on the other side of the ocean, after being slapped in the face by us last time, have also started to build ships frantically. In the future, our pressure will be even greater. Lieutenant General Hipper then he said, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince does not intend to build any more battleships. However, I think His Royal Highness is right. Although capital ships are the main force of naval warfare now, they will no longer be the main force soon. Therefore, if we build the main force again, it is a complete waste of resources. If the Imperial Navy wants to continue to maintain its position as the world's hegemon in the future, it must continue to innovate. His Royal Highness's vision is farther than ours. Rear Admiral Earthside. Battleships and battle cruisers and other capital ships will no longer be the main force. How is that possible? Lieutenant General Franz von Hipper seemed a little unbelievable. As the Chief of Staff of the High Seas Fleet and an excellent naval commander, he is undoubtedly a believer in large ships and cannons. Yes, they will be obsolete soon. Admiral Reinhard Scheer assured. Then what will be the main force of future naval warfare? Submarines or aircraft carriers as secret weapons? Lieutenant General Hipper asked. Your Excellency Chief of Staff, last week, I personally observed the actual combat exercise of our two aircraft carriers. It was held in the Baltic Sea. The carrier-based aircraft that took off from the two aircraft carriers launched an attack on the target ship. It is hard for you to imagine. I saw how shocking the scene of the overwhelming attack by carrier-based aircraft is. The warships on the sea are completely under siege. Although, the carrier-based aircraft on board the aircraft carrier can only use light aviation torpedoes and 200. However, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince claimed that with the advancement of technology, the aircraft carrier in service at the next level will be able to carry carrier-based aircraft capable of carrying medium-sized aerial torpedoes and aerial bombs weighing up to 500 kilograms at that time. The attack power of the aircraft carrier will be further enhanced, and there will be a fatal threat to the capital ship. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Although Lieutenant General Hipper had some difficulty accepting such a result, he couldn't help but nodded. If the armor of a battleship can resist light torpedoes, then medium torpedoes can undoubtedly pose a great threat to it. Not to mention, it may be equipped with carrier-based aircraft capable of carrying heavy torpedoes in the future. At that time, it will be the time to really challenge the status of the battleship. It seems that the big guns we have been insisting on will not wait long. Hipper shook his head with a wry smile. Yes, this decisive battle between us and the British Navy may be the pinnacle battle of the era of big ships and cannons, and it will also be the end battle. In the next naval battle, the main force will no longer be these battleships, but it is aircraft carriers and carrier-based aircraft. I'm very fortunate that in the era of big ships and giant guns, we surpass the British. In the next era of aircraft carriers and carrier-based aircraft, we will continue to surpass other countries and lead the world's navy. This will make our navy as strong as ever. The Imperial Navy in the future will still be the most powerful navy in the world. Admiral Reinhard Scheer is full of enthusiasm for the future. Confidence. General, your words are very good. Whether it is the era of large ships and giant guns or the era of aircraft carriers and carrier-based aircraft, as long as we can continue to lead the world, that is our victory. In the future, the Imperial Navy will still be able to dominate the world, Lieutenant General Hipper said. Well, the construction of the next 4 aircraft carriers has already started. The research and development of carrier-based aircraft has also entered a critical period. In the future, the Imperial Navy will be even stronger. Of course, before the new aircraft carrier enters service, the British have been defeated. I hope that we can use a brilliant victory to draw a successful end to the era of big ships and cannons. Chapter 408, Sneak Attack Plan. In addition to aircraft carriers, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince also attaches great importance to submarines. In his conversation with His Excellency Count Tirpitz, he proposed that there will be only 3 types of warships in the future navy, namely aircraft carriers, destroyers, and submarines. At most, some other it's just a professional warship. Admiral Reinhard Scheer continued. Lieutenant General Hipper was undoubtedly the first to hear such a secret, and he was stunned. Qin Tian's remarks were too unbelievable for him. You know, there are many types of warships in the navy now. If there are only 3 left, what will future naval warfare be like? Lieutenant General Hipper is really unimaginable. However, he was very lucky afterwards. His Royal Highness, the genius Crown Prince, is German. It is precisely because of this that Germany was able to defeat a powerful enemy in this war. The foresight of His Highness the Crown Prince is not something we can guess. Since His Highness is so sure, there must be a reason for him. I believe that His Highness is correct, because His Highness did not make any mistakes at all. Lieutenant General Hipper also said. Lieutenant General Reinhard Scheer nodded. In terms of naval development, we are nothing more than mortals. However, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is definitely a god. He has a vision like a god. Lieutenant General Hipper agreed with this point of view. Similarly, this also makes them more confident about future wars. With the correct leadership of His Royal Highness, who is almost like a god, how could the Imperial Navy lose? By the way, Commander, speaking of submarines, a submarine officer submitted a very interesting battle plan. Perhaps you can take a look. Lieutenant General Hipper said suddenly. Oh, what is the battle plan? Admiral Reinhard Scheer asked. Although submarines are not very powerful yet. However, since submarines will become one of the 3 types of warships that Qin Tian is optimistic about in the future navy, this also makes Admiral Reinhard Scheer attach great importance to submarines. This battle plan was proposed by a submarine captain named Donitz. He is now lieutenant colonel. His submarines, during the war, sank many British merchant ships. In terms of submarine warfare, he has great talent, Lieutenant General Hipper said. Oh. Lieutenant General Hipper's words made General Reinhard Scheer more interested in this. Lieutenant General Donitz proposed that he hoped to drive his submarine into Scapa Flow and launch an attack on the submarines of the Royal Navy anchored there. The main battleship of the Navy will constitute a fatal blow. It is definitely a good opportunity to weaken the strength of the Royal Navy. Lieutenant General Hipper said. What? Sneak into Scapa Flow for a sneak attack? Got. I have to admit, Lieutenant Colonel Donitz is really a bold guy. But if it succeeds, it is indeed a very good victory. Reinhard? Admiral Scheer said. The main force of the Royal Navy is now assembled in Scapa Flow. There, almost 70% of the capital ships of the Royal Navy were assembled. If the submarines of the German Navy can be mixed in, wouldn't it be easy to use torpedoes to sink the capital ship of the British Navy? Even if a submarine carries limited torpedoes, even if it sinks 2 or 3 capital ships of the British Navy, the British Navy will suffer heavy losses. After all, for the severely damaged Royal Navy, every capital ship is very precious. If the Queen Elizabeth class battleship or the Revenge class battleship were sunk, it would be a major victory. Now, it is undoubtedly the 2 battleships of the British Navy that can pose a threat to the German Navy. If they can be destroyed before the decisive battle, the High Seas Fleet's chances of winning will be further improved. Yes, Your Excellency, Commander. This is a very risky plan. The British have assembled the main force of the Royal Navy in Scapa Flow, and its defense must be extremely strict. In addition, we have no idea about the hydrological conditions there. Unfamiliar. Therefore, it is definitely not a simple matter to sneak into Scapa Flow. Lieutenant General Hipper said. Admiral Reinhard Scheer nodded. Indeed, the whole plan is very risky, and if you are not careful, it may fail. And once it fails, it will inevitably die. Why did Lieutenant Colonel Donitz submit such a risky battle plan? Admiral Reinhard Scheer asked. I heard that one of his friends, who was also our submarine captain, was sunk by the British during the British bait plan. Therefore, he wanted to avenge his friend, so he proposed this battle plan. The staff also believes that this plan is too risky. However, Lieutenant Colonel Donitz has been insisting. Lieutenant General Hipper said. The British bait plan caused us to lose so many submarines. No wonder Donitz wanted to avenge his friend. However, as an officer, how could he be so impulsive? This battle plan is really too good. Take a risk. Admiral Reinhard Scheer wanted to veto this battle plan. Your Excellency, this battle plan is risky. However, if it succeeds, the results will be very fruitful. I think we can try it. Lieutenant General Hipper had different opinions. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz is our best submarine commander. It would be a pity to let him carry out such a risky plan if it fails. Lieutenant General Reinhard Scheer shook his head. Your Excellency, Commander, it is precisely because Lieutenant Colonel Donitz is our most outstanding submarine commander. Therefore, we should have confidence in him. I believe that he will definitely win. Lieutenant General Hipper said. Admiral Reinhard Scheer and Lieutenant General Hipper could not reach an agreement on this issue. No way. They can only report this battle plan to the Ministry of the Navy. Qin Tian also learned about this battle plan from Marshal Count Tirpitz. He is very interested in this. Qin Tian clearly remembered that in another time and space, at the beginning of World War II, an ace captain of the Third Reich sneaked into Scapa Flow with a submarine and carried out a sneak attack on the British Navy. In this time and space, the defense of the British in Scapa Flow is far from being comparable to another time and space. Therefore, if the submarine attacks, there is a greater possibility of success. Therefore, Qin Tian directly approved this battle plan and asked the Navy to provide Lieutenant Colonel Donitz with as much preparation and support as possible. Chapter 409, Infiltration. Berlin, Qin Tian's office. Qin Tian is summoning Donitz. He was very interested in Donitz's plan to attack Scapa Flow. After approving Donitz's plan, Qin Tian summoned Donitz a week later. Lieutenant Colonel, is the performance of our new submarine not bad? Qin Tian asked. Your Highness, very good, very good. Compared with the U-100 submarine we used before, it is much better. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz looked excited. Originally, he didn't think that his plan would be approved. After all, his plan is too risky, and the possibility of success is very small. However, it turned out that the Crown Prince of the Empire personally approved his plan and provided him with sufficient support, which made him more confident in this plan. The new submarine Qin Tian is talking about is the U-200 submarine built by Deutsch Shipyard. This is an improved version of the U-100 submarine, which not only has a larger displacement, but is also faster and carries more torpedoes. The overall combat power has been greatly improved. The U-200 submarine has just started mass production, and the equipment for Lieutenant Colonel Donitz is a previously built sample. Lieutenant Colonel, your plan is very risky. Originally, I didn't intend to approve it. But then I thought, maybe you can really create a miracle. I have asked the Ministry of the Navy to provide you with all the aid helped. I hope you can succeed this time. Qin Tian said. His Royal Highness, I will succeed this time. Donitz was equally confident. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and his crew prepared for 10 days before leaving Wilhelmshaven and sailing into the North Sea. During these 10 days, they not only had to be familiar with the new U-200 submarine, but also had to study tactics, as well as ocean currents and other hydrological conditions and Scapa Flow, etc., to ensure the success of this plan. Germany's intelligence agencies have also started to collect detailed information on Scapa Flow for them. What excited Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and the others was that the British did not seem to be aware of the underwater threat, so they did not install underwater anti-submarine nets in Scapa Flow. On the night of March 12, Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and his crew, driving the new U-037 submarine, left the Wilhelmshaven naval base and sailed into the North Sea. They are not expected to reach Scapa Flow until tomorrow night. And it must go smoothly, without encountering the ships of the British Navy. Otherwise, you need to spend more time on the road. The North Sea is too narrow. Now the warships of Britain and Germany often meet and fight in the North Sea. Although there are very few battles at the capital ship level, battles between small and medium warships are happening almost every day. Therefore, the U-037 submarine needs to evade British warships so that it can sneak into Scapa Flow secretly. Boss, this submarine is really good. It is much better than our previous one. The first officer said to Lieutenant Colonel Donitz. Of course, this is the latest type of submarine. It has not yet started to equip troops. For this operation, His Highness the Crown Prince specially handed over the built samples to us. Therefore, this time we will definitely not be able to live up to the expectations of His Highness the Crown Prince. We must kill a few more British battleships, said Lieutenant Colonel Donitz. Boss, how many British capital ships do you plan to kill this time? A submarine soldier asked. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz thought for a while, and then said, our submarine has a total of 6 torpedo tubes, plus the reserve torpedoes, a total of 18 torpedoes. This time, I plan to launch at least 12 torpedoes out. At such a short distance, there will be no problem in getting a hit. With 12 torpedoes, there will be no problem in killing 3 British battleships, right? 3 battleships? No problem at all. These are all heavy torpedoes. British warships have always had weak defenses. The warheads of 533mm heavy torpedoes are enough to tear their weak armor. However, sir, it takes a lot of time for us to load the torpedo. Once we hit the target, the whole of Scapa Flow will be in chaos. Will the British give us so much time? Lieutenant Colonel Dunnits couldn't help but frowned. It would take at least 3 minutes for the 6 torpedo tubes to be reloaded. Once an explosion occurs, the British will definitely come to their senses. Therefore, it is very difficult to shoot 12 torpedoes in a short period of time. I think we can make preparations for loading before launching. After the torpedo is launched, load it immediately. After loading, launch it immediately and then flee. In this way, the British will not easily find us. The gunner suggested. Lieutenant Colonel Dunnits nodded. That's it. This is the only way we can launch 12 torpedoes in the shortest time. At that time, everyone will have to work hard. In addition, in order to ensure our hit rate, during the first salvo, you must find a good position to ensure that all 6 torpedoes hit the target. In this case, the second round of salvo will be much easier. Yes, sir. Everyone replied. God bless us. This time, we will definitely succeed. Lieutenant Colonel Dunnits said. God bless us. Victory. Lieutenant Colonel Dunnits and the others were lucky. They were not hit by a British warship along the way, which allowed them to reach a place less than 50 kilometers away from Scapa Flow in the evening of the next day. This is already a high-risk zone, so the submarine has been staying underwater, with at most a periscope sticking out. Everyone take a break. After dark, we will enter Scapa Flow. Lieutenant Colonel Dunnits ordered. The crew began to eat or sleep. They all know that there will be a fierce battle tonight. If successful, they will be heroes. But if they fail, their end will be buried in Scapa Flow with this submarine. Although, after participating in this operation, they are tantamount to disregarding life and death. However, people all have the desire to survive and want to live. Being able to be a hero, being able to live, no one would choose to die. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the sky has completely dimmed down. U-037 submarine, like a ghost in the sea, slowly sailed towards Scapa Flow. 10 kilometers away from Scapa Flow, the submarine dived underwater. Next, they will sneak all the way. Fortunately, the U-200 submarine has an underwater endurance of 100 nautical miles, allowing them to easily complete this mission. The British did not know about this. They never thought that the submarines of the German Navy would slip directly into their main military port. Chapter 410, Launch. Scapa Flow is an important base of the Royal Navy and the home port of the Grand Fleet. After Germany became the primary threat to the United Kingdom, the British Navy formed a large fleet, the purpose of which was to deal with the German Navy. It's just that the large fleet, which suffered heavy losses, now seems to be unable to deal with the German Navy. Although the strength of the Grand Fleet is not bad, overall, it is far inferior to the German Navy. In Scapa Flow, a total of 24 capital ships of the Royal Navy were moored, including 18 battleships and the remaining 6 battle cruisers. Among them, the Queen Elizabeth-class battleship and the Revenge-class battleship, the 10 absolute main battleships, are all anchored here. In addition, there are the remaining King George V-class battleships, 4 Orion-class battleships, 2 Giant-class battleships and the Neptune battleship. As for the 3 Street Vincent-class battleships and the 3 Bellerophon-class battleships, they are moored at Wake Harbor and form horns with the main force of the large fleet in Scapa Flow. As for the battleship Dreadnought, the pioneer of the Dreadnought era, it remained in the southern waters. Inside the headquarters of the Grand Fleet, the lights are bright. Although it is already night, there are still many officers on duty. Admiral John Jellicoe, Commander of the Grand Fleet, and Lieutenant General David Beatty, Chief of Staff, even stayed in the office. The current situation is very unfavorable for Britain. As the Commander-in-Chief of Staff of the Grand Fleet, one can imagine the pressure the two of them endured. In particular, Vice Admiral David Beatty, the fleet he commanded, was defeated by the German Navy twice, with heavy losses, which made him feel ashamed. If it wasn't for Churchill's trust in him, and my previous failures were not because of him, but because of the huge gap in strength, maybe his chief of staff of the Grand Fleet would have been retired long ago. Your Excellency, the German warships are mobilizing more and more frequently. According to the information sent back by our agents, their Derflinger class battle cruisers and Mackensen class battle cruisers are both they have already returned to the mainland forest. Now in the Atlantic Ocean, only the Molt class battle cruisers and the Blücher class battle cruisers are left. I have a hunch that the Germans are trying to fight us. We are ready for the decisive battle. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. General John Jellicoe nodded, and he could also feel that the situation seemed to be getting more and more critical. It was as if some kind of threat was constantly approaching them. The powerful German Navy really put too much pressure on them. The German Navy is too strong. It will take a long time for our new battleships to be built. His Excellency Churchill is right. The Germans will not give us any more time. John Jellicoe the Admiral sighed. However, even if the Germans are far stronger than us, we have no way out. This time, we must fight with all our strength. Otherwise, the British Empire will be over. Admiral John Jellicoe said. Yes, Your Excellency Commander. This time we have to fight to the death. Lieutenant General David Beatty's eyes were full of determination. For Lieutenant General David Beatty, the previous failure was like the shame imposed on him, making him feel ashamed all the time. And if you want to wash away the shame, you have to defeat the Germans. Even if you can defeat the Germans, you have to fight to the end. Even if you die in battle, it will be much better than now. Your Excellency Chief of Staff, once the war breaks out, I need you to lead the battle cruiser formation and entangle the German battle cruisers. Buy time for our battleship formation to defeat the Germans. I know, this is very difficult. But, we did not. There are other ways, said Admiral John Jellicoe. Your Excellency, Commander, I can understand. When the time comes, I will definitely do my best to complete the task. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. If he can entangle the battle cruiser formation of the German Navy, this will undoubtedly give the battleship formation a fair chance to fight the battle cruisers of the German Navy. If luck is good enough and the battleship formation can win the decisive battle, then they still have a slight chance of winning. Otherwise, you will lose. John. Admiral Jellicoe nodded. He knew how difficult the task of Lieutenant General David Beatty was. They are already very clear about the combat effectiveness of the battle cruisers of the German Navy. Even if the other 6 battle cruisers of the German Navy do not go to battle, Lieutenant General David Beatty has no chance of winning. If it doesn't work, it will end up being sunk in the end. If possible, he certainly didn't want to choose this tactic. However, this was considered impossible. At this moment, in the narrow waterway of Scapa Flow, a German submarine is sailing slowly. In order to avoid hitting reefs or rocks, the speed of the submarine has dropped to 3 knots. But even so, it is still dangerous. Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz, his forehead and face, were covered with sweat. Even the military uniform on his body was already wet with sweat. Fortunately, after 2 hours of low-speed sailing, they finally passed the waterway and entered Scapa Flow. Sir, we have successfully slipped in. Very good. Now slowly raise the periscope and observe the surroundings. Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz ordered. After the periscope was raised, Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz began to observe the surroundings. He could clearly see that the battleships of the British Navy were quietly moored in the berth. However, because of the dark sky, it is difficult to see clearly. Only a little blurry shadow can be seen, and the specific model cannot be distinguished at all. The Queen Elizabeth class battleships and the Revenge class battleships have the largest displacement, so let's launch torpedoes at the largest. Afterwards, Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz made a decision. The U-037 submarine began to move forward, choosing the most suitable attack position. Half an hour later, Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz was ready. The bow of the submarine was aimed at the 2 huge battleships. The 2 torpedo tubes behind were aimed at a battleship. In such a short distance, even if 2 torpedoes attack a target, as long as they hit, they will be seriously injured if they don't die. Therefore, Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz planned to attack 3 targets in the first salvo. Get ready for loading. Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz ordered. Except for the gunner, everyone went to help reload. They need to be loaded in the shortest possible time after the torpedo is fired. Launch. Boom. Boom. The torpedo shot out of the torpedo tubes and rushed towards the target at high speed. Chapter 411. Chaos. The sound of bang, bang coming from underwater did not attract anyone's attention. The watermarks left by the 6 torpedoes sailing at high speed on the sea surface were also not found. The night became the best cover for the German submarine attack. Quick, quick, load the next batch of torpedoes. Turn immediately and aim at the next batch of targets. Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz ordered. Yes, sir. The submariners were busy loading torpedoes, and at the same time, the submarine was turning. Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz was obviously planning to hit as many targets as possible this time. The battleship Warspite is the second of the Queen Elizabeth-class battleships. This is a huge battleship with a displacement of 33,000 tons. It is equipped with 4 twin 42 caliber 381mm main guns, and more. It is amazingly powerful. However, compared with the 380mm 50 caliber main gun equipped by the German Navy, it is undoubtedly much worse. In terms of artillery technology, Germany has a clear advantage. The Queen Elizabeth-class battleship and the Revenge-class battleship have become the main battleships of the British Navy, and they are also the trump cards against the German Navy. It's just that the British Navy does not have much confidence in whether these two classes of battleships can really confront the powerful battleships of the German Navy. In the previous naval battles, the strength of the German Navy and the advanced warships undoubtedly taught them a good lesson. It is already late at night, and the sailors on the battleship Warspite have already rested. A British sailor walked out of the scene yawning, wanting to boo him. Although, there are toilets on the battleship. However, he still prefers to sprinkle directly into the sea. It's just that, when he just escaped from the guy and was about to release the water, his sleepy eyes suddenly widened. What is that? The British sailor couldn't help but exclaimed. He clearly saw that the 2 watermarks rushed towards their battleship more quickly. That thing looks like a torpedo sailing fast on the sea. Damn, that's a torpedo. Get up, we are under enemy torpedo attack. The British sailors exclaimed. His shout, under the silent night sky, spread far, far away. It also attracted the attention of many officers on duty. However, it was too late. 2 533mm heavy torpedoes, under the terrified eyes of the British sailor, slammed into the hull of the battleship Warspite. Boom. Boom. Immediately, 2 huge explosions sounded, and flames burst out from the side of the battleship Warspite. After the warheads of the 2 heavy torpedoes exploded, the huge power directly tore apart the underwater armor of the battleship Warspite. Although the underwater armor of the battleship Warspite is as thick as 330mm, it still cannot resist it. The huge impact caused the sleeping sailors in the battleship to fall under the bed one after another, and some of them were even injured. The seawater poured into the battleship along the torn armor, making the situation of the battleship even more critical. What's going on? Did we get hit? Damn, could there be some accident? The British sailors on the battleship War Weary rushed out of the cabin in panic. Everyone knows that, if they are really attacked, they will only be more dangerous staying on the battleship. When these sailors rushed out, they happened to see that the side of the battleship was flooding with water. Damage control started immediately, but, in this dark situation, it is conceivable to want to plug the loopholes. Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty, who were staying at the headquarters to discuss the issue, were also shocked by the explosion. What's going on? Did the ammunition depot explode? Admiral John Jellicoe frowned. He didn't want such an accident to happen at such a critical moment. It doesn't look like it. It's the Warspite. He seems to have been hit. Lieutenant General David Beatty's face was a little ugly. It was hit. How is this possible? Admiral John Jellicoe obviously couldn't believe it. After all, this is the home port of the Grand Fleet, and it can be regarded as their lair. The defense is so strict. Not only there are so many warships, but also the coastal defense forts are also densely covered. Under such circumstances, how could it be possible to be attacked by the enemy? Boom. Boom. At this moment, 2 more loud noises came. I saw that the side of another battleship also burst into dazzling flames. John Jellicoe, Admiral, and David Beatty, Lieutenant General, suddenly stunned. This was just the beginning, and then there were 2 explosions again. Damn it, the submarine. It was the German submarine. We were attacked by the German submarine. Lieutenant General David Beatty said angrily. Warspite, Warrior and Conqueror were all hit. Admiral John Jellicoe paled. He clearly remembered the berths of every capital ship in the Grand Fleet. These capital ships were attacked by torpedoes. Obviously, the situation would be very bad. Even if they were not sunk, they would be severely damaged. In this case, the strength of the Royal Navy will be further weakened in the next battle. It will be even more difficult for them to win future naval battles. Violent explosions occurred one after another, and several capital ships were attacked, causing Scapa Flow to suddenly become a mess. The high-power searchlights have been turned on, and they are scanning back and forth on the sea, looking for targets. Destroyers are also being activated one after another, ready to catch the despicable raiders. At this time, the German sailors on the U-037 submarine were loading torpedoes. No 1 torpedo tube is loaded. No 2 is loaded. Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz was very anxious. There had been an explosion, though he didn't know if he had succeeded. However, what he had to do was to launch the remaining 6 torpedoes as quickly as possible, and then escape. Otherwise, they might not be able to escape. No 6 torpedo tube is loaded. Launch immediately. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz ordered immediately. The submarine at this moment has completed its turn and aimed at a new target. It only needs to launch the torpedo. As for whether he could hit the target, Lieutenant Colonel Donitz didn't care too much. Boom. 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 6 torpedo tubes launched the torpedoes successively. 6 torpedoes frantically fired towards their respective targets. Quick, dive right away and run away. Guys, pray to God we can escape alive and go back to Germany. Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz said. The U-037 submarine escaped, and at this moment Scapa Flow is in chaos. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412. Run away. Hurry up. Increase the speed to 10 knots. We must leave here as soon as possible. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz ordered, with excitement and nervousness on his face. There is no doubt that their operation this time has been successful. The explosions heard before undoubtedly indicated that the torpedoes they launched had hit their targets. Regardless of whether the torpedoes launched in the second round hit the target, their results this time are already very good. If the 6 torpedoes launched in the second round can hit 1 or 2 targets again, this will allow them to obtain greater results. However, for Lieutenant Colonel Dunitz and other crew members, the most important thing is how to safely escape from Scapa Flow and return to Germany. Otherwise, the angry British will definitely tear them to pieces. U-037 submarine began to drive quickly towards the waterway of Scapa Flow, trying to escape here. After they hit many of the capital ships of the British Navy, they have already angered the British Navy. On the surface of the sea, searchlights were flickering everywhere, and destroyers one after another began to search for suspicious targets. If they stay any longer, I'm afraid they will be sunk before long. Therefore, you must escape as soon as possible to ensure your own safety. At this moment in Scapa Flow, the officers and soldiers of the British Navy's Grand Fleet have gone crazy. The sudden sneak attack caused them heavy losses. This is a disgrace to every soldier in the Royal Navy. They all want to do their best to find out the German submarine and destroy it to wash away their shame. Of course, even if they sank the German submarine, they would not be able to make up for the loss. The cost of a capital ship is more than 20 times that of a submarine. Boom. 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 Suddenly, there was another explosion in Scapa Flow. The 2 battleships were hit again. This made the officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy stunned. My God. The Colossus and Neptune are hit. Damn it, isn't there more than one German U-boat in it? The battleship Giant and the battleship Neptune are both dreadnoughts, equipped with 305mm main guns, and their armor is weaker than that of super dreadnoughts. The battleship Giant ate 2 heavy torpedoes, and 2 large holes were blown out of the waterline armor, and it began to sink directly. Although the battleship Neptune was relatively lucky, it only ate one torpedo. However, its weak underwater armor still couldn't resist, and a big hole was torn open. Seawater is being poured into the hull of the battleship Neptune frantically. Such an injury is already considered a serious injury. John, General Jellicoe and David, BT Lieutenant General 2, Paleface. Originally, the Royal Navy was already at a disadvantage when facing the German Navy. Now, they have been attacked by German submarines in Scapa Flow, causing them heavy losses. In this case, the strength of the Royal Navy will be further weakened. When they face the German Navy, their disadvantages will be even more obvious. If it is said that the Royal Navy had a 20% chance of winning before, then now, they have almost no chance of winning. It can almost be said that the Royal Navy is doomed to fail in future naval battles. Such a result is undoubtedly unacceptable to anyone. They lost the battle before it was fought. This made General John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty very unwilling. Do our best to rescue the injured battleship. In addition, send more destroyers to search, and we must find the German submarine. Admiral John Jellicoe said through gritted teeth. Now he can only hope that those injured battleships are all slightly injured. If so, it won't be long before it can be repaired. If it is seriously injured, it will take more time. Obviously, the German Navy will never give them so much time. Admiral John Jellicoe hated the German submarine that attacked them even more. If Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and the others stood in front of him now, he would definitely kill them all without hesitation. Yes, General. Lieutenant General David Beatty nodded. In his heart, he was also very negative. This time, the situation is undoubtedly worse. It has become more difficult for the Royal Navy to win future naval battles. Damn Germans, they are like mice. Where are they hiding? Quickly, chase south. Depth charges are ready. Blow those Germans out for me. The captain of a British destroyer ordered. Soon, the depth charges are ready. These bucket-like depth charges were pushed into the sea by British naval soldiers. Boom. Boom. A dull explosion sound came from the bottom of the water, but what came up was nothing but a few dead fish. The U-037 submarine of the German Navy, hiding underwater, trying to escape. Although their speed has increased to 10 knots, compared to destroyers with a speed of more than 30 knots, their speed is still very slow. How long will it take us to escape Scapa Flow? Lieutenant Colonel Donitz asked. Sir, at the current speed, it will take at least another hour. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz couldn't help frowning tightly. For them, this hour is undoubtedly the most dangerous time. The destroyers of the British Navy kept passing over their heads, so that they didn't even dare to raise their periscopes. Once discovered by the British Navy, it means certain death. Boom. 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 A dull explosion sounded. It was the depth charge of the British Navy exploding. The shock wave generated after the explosion shook the underwater submarine. The German submarine soldiers inside were all pale, for fear that the submarine would be hit. Crunch. Crunch. This is the sound made by the pressure hull of the submarine. The huge water pressure formed after the explosion of the charge is also a huge test for the hull of the submarine. Fortunately, the performance of the latest U-200 submarine is very good, and it successfully withstood the huge water pressure, so that the submariners of the German Navy could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Next, the British Navy's pursuit of the U-037 submarine continued, but it was not successful. It was not until after dawn that the British Navy gave up the pursuit, because they didn't know that the German submarine had successfully escaped. Although the North Sea is not big, it is also very difficult to hunt down a submarine in the vast sea. Chapter 413. The prospect is worrying. The scenery of Scapa Flow was originally very beautiful. However, after a large number of warships of the British Royal Navy were stationed, the tranquility here has been completely disturbed. Today's Scapa Flow is even more confused and mournful. The sneak attack by the German submarine last night caused great losses to the Royal Navy. There were a total of 5 battleships that were hit. Among them, there are many cutting-edge capital ships such as the battleship Warrior and the battleship Warrior. The other battleships Conqueror, Giant and Neptune are also the main battleships of the Royal Navy with heavy losses. However, just one submarine of the German Navy cost them such a big loss. For the Royal Navy, this is undoubtedly difficult for them to accept. Your Excellency, the damage assessment report has come out. The adjutant walked into Admiral John Jellicoe's office and reported to him. At this time, the office was filled with smoke, as if a fire had broken out. Admiral John Jellicoe stayed up all night last night. How could he be able to sleep when he was attacked so badly? General John Jellicoe sent a report. Read it carefully. Among the 5 battleships hit by the submarines of the German Navy last night, the most severely damaged were the battleships Warrior and Warrior. Because of their larger size, these 2 battleships became the focus of the U-037 submarines attack. 2 torpedoes hit the 2 battleships respectively. After the underwater armor was torn apart, the 2 battleships were seriously flooded. After the efforts of the damage control personnel, the 2 battleships were still unable to be saved. Now, the 2 battleships have sunk in the port. Most of the hull has sunk into the water. Although, with the technical strength of the United Kingdom, it is not a big problem to salvage these 2 battleships and then repair them. However, this obviously takes a lot of time. And now, what they lack the most is time. The battleship Conqueror was hit by 2 torpedoes at the same time. However, the damage was not serious. Their damage control response was prompt and the watertight compartments were closed. However, due to a lot of seawater pouring into the hull still tilted to a certain extent. The subsequent repair work is equally difficult and takes a lot of time. The battleships Giant and Neptune, because of their weaker armor, suffered more serious damage after being hit by torpedoes. It's just that it didn't sink directly. It will also take a lot of time to repair these 2 battleships. Damn it. 5 battleships were attacked, 2 were sunk directly, and the remaining 3 were unable to participate in the battle for a short time. How should we fight this battle? Admiral John Jellicoe had a very headache. Originally, compared with the battleships of the German Navy, the battleships of the Royal Navy had a certain numerical advantage. However, if these 5 battleships are excluded, this will make the Royal Navy's numerical advantage no longer exist. General, how do we report to London now? Lieutenant General David Beatty also looked very tired because of staying up late. General John Jellicoe thought for a while and then said, report truthfully. After all, it is impossible to keep a secret of such a big matter. David? Beatty Lieutenant General nodded. There is no doubt that the sneak attack by the German submarine last night once again severely damaged the Royal Navy. Moreover, the face of the Royal Navy was also dealt a huge blow. It also makes the Royal Navy have little chance of winning in future wars. He could guess how angry Churchill, the Secretary of the Navy, would be when he heard the news. However, there is no way to do this. Who made Scapa Flow's underwater defense almost equal to 0. This allowed the German submarine to sneak in easily, launch the torpedo, and then leave calmly. From the beginning to the end, the British Navy did not even see the face of the German submarine. This is undoubtedly a shame for them. General, so many of our battleships have been severely damaged this time. I'm afraid the next battle will be difficult. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Obviously, he has no more confidence in the future decisive battle at sea. I know. But, do we have other options? The Germans dispatched submarines to attack us and succeeded. This will further fuel their arrogance. I think the Germans will soon provoke a decisive battle go. Admiral John Jellicoe sighed. If possible, he certainly hopes to delay the decisive battle for another year or 2. In that case, the Royal Navy will be able to regain its strength. Even in the face of the powerful German Navy, it is not impossible to win at all, and it will definitely not be as embarrassing as it is now. However, Admiral John Jellicoe could feel that the decisive battle seemed to be about to begin. At worst, we'll hide in the military port and not fight. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Is this possible? Admiral John Jellicoe shook his head. David? Lieutenant General Beatty was also silent for a while. Of course he also knew that it was impossible. Even if they hide in the military port, the Germans will not let them go. Although, the military port has complete coastal defenses. But those coastal cities in Britain will inevitably become the targets of German naval attacks. Even the capital may be attacked by the German Navy. At that time, if they don't fight, is that still possible? No matter how bad it is, as long as the German Navy destroys the British coastal shipyards, then the battleships they are building can no longer continue to be built. The Royal Navy has no chance of defeating the German Navy. Moreover, the United Kingdom is still under the blockade of Germany. Overseas trade lines have been completely cut off. Next, this caused a shortage of various materials in the UK. I'm afraid that it will not be long before the British society will collapse. Under such circumstances, how could they go to war with Germany? No matter what, our decisive battle with the Germans must continue. Unless the government decides to admit defeat and surrender. Otherwise, we have to do our best to win the British Empire. John Jellicoe entered will say. David? Betty Lieutenant General nodded in recognition of this. Indeed, they have no way out. Chapter 414, Churchill's Roar. On the morning of March 14th, Churchill, the British Secretary of the Navy, left home and got into a car to go to the Admiralty to work. He is also very busy in the current tense situation. In many cases, even rest in the office. It is also normal to eat and live in the office. Last night, it was rare that Churchill had no other business to deal with, so Churchill went home and rested for the night. He has not been with his family for a long time. Oh, I don't know how long this kind of life can last. I hope the Germans can launch an attack later. Churchill sighed. As the Minister of the Navy, he knew that if he fought the Germans now, they would have almost no chance of winning. Even, in order to strengthen the strength of the Royal Navy, he planned to send those old former dreadnoughts to fight. Although, the performance of the former dreadnought is far from being comparable to that of the dreadnought. However, if the number is large enough, it may also be able to play a certain role. However, Churchill has not yet made up his mind. Because if you do that, it will cause huge casualties to the Royal Navy. However, if in the end, there is no way to do it, then it is also a way, if the Grand Fleet of the Royal Navy can severely injure the Germans, or in other words, it will hurt both sides. Then, the final decisive battle may be decided by the pre-dreadnought ships. At that time, the dozens of pre-dreadnought ships of the Royal Navy, maybe it will come in handy, Churchill thought secretly. If that is the case, then the British Navy still has a chance of winning. After all, in terms of dreadnoughts, they cannot compare with the German Navy. However, in terms of former dreadnoughts, the Royal Navy still has an absolute advantage. Of course, if the battle has really reached that point, then the capital ships of the Grand Fleet may have all been lost. This is undoubtedly a heavy blow to the Royal Navy. But if the victory can be won in the end, then, no matter how big the losses, in Churchill's view, it is completely worth it. May God bless the British Empire. We must win this battle. Churchill said secretly. When he came to his office, Churchill found that the secretary was already waiting there. However, the expression on the secretary's face was unnatural, which made Churchill's heart tense. Because he knew that his secretary would usually only have such an expression when there was bad news. But, what bad news can there be for the Royal Navy now? Their main fleet stayed in Scapa Flow and did not go to sea to fight the Germans. Under such circumstances, even if there is a loss, it should not be too big. What happened? Churchill asked. Since there is bad news, there is no way to hide it. Instead of doing this, it is better to ask actively. Your Excellency, a telegram from the Grand Fleet Command. The secretary said to Churchill. Churchill took the telegram and read it carefully. However, soon his face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. Bastard. How is this? Jellicoe and Betty, what are they doing? The heavily fortified Scapa Flow was unexpectedly attacked by a German submarine, and so many capital ships were lost. This made the following: how can we continue fighting? Churchill was furious. It was hard for him not to get angry at such news. This morning, he also imagined that the Royal Navy might still have a slight chance of winning in future naval battles, as long as the large fleet can cause heavy losses to the German Navy, even achieve a 1-to-1 battle loss. In this case, they have the opportunity to rely on the number advantage of the former dreadnoughts to regain victory. But now, a sneak attack by a submarine of the German Navy has caused them to lose so many capital ships. How can we continue this battle? Churchill has completely lost confidence in the Royal Navy. The secretary lowered his head and said nothing. Obviously, he had already guessed that Churchill would definitely get angry after reading this telegram. This is also impossible. Who made the big fleet lose so much this time? Let General Jellicoe and General Betty come to see me immediately, Churchill ordered angrily. Yes, sir. The secretary immediately went to send a telegram. Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty, who were cleaning up the mess in Scapa Flow, did not dare to neglect, after receiving the telegram from the Admiralty, and immediately set off from Scapa Flow by seaplane. Rushed to London. They all knew that they would definitely be scolded if they went to London this time. However, there is nothing they can do. Who caused the Royal Navy to lose so much this time? When John Jellicoe Admiral and David Beatty Lieutenant General arrived in London, it was already afternoon. The news that the Grand Fleet was hit hard again has also been reported to the cabinet. After Prime Minister Asquith learned of the news, he didn't even eat lunch. He directly asked Churchill to wait until General John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty arrived, and let them go to the Prime Minister's office. Obviously, Prime Minister Asquith was very dissatisfied with the loss of the Grand Fleet. Your Excellency, we are deeply sorry for the loss last night. Admiral John Jellicoe apologized as soon as he saw Churchill. After all, it was their negligence that caused the German submarine to sneak into Scapa Flow, causing the Grand Fleet to pay a heavy price. What about the damaged battleships? Churchill said coldly. He was very disappointed with the performance of the Grand Fleet. Your Excellency, we have urgently arranged for repairs. Among them, the Conqueror, Giant, and Neptune will take about a month. The Warspite and Warrior are seriously damaged, and will take at least 3 months. It will take a month to repair it, Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Churchill's face suddenly became even uglier. So, Warspite and Warrior will definitely be absent from the next decisive battle between us and the Germans? Churchill asked. Your Excellency, if the Germans fight us within 3 months, these 2 battleships will indeed not be able to participate in the battle. Admiral John Jellicoe answered bravely. Do you think the Germans will give us more time? Churchill asked rhetorically. Suddenly, Admiral John Jellicoe was speechless. Obviously, the current situation is becoming more and more critical, and the Germans will definitely not give them much more time. If it is not done well, the decisive battle will start within a month. This also means that none of the 5 battleships that were severely damaged could participate in the decisive battle. This will also make the Royal Navy's chances of winning even smaller. Chapter 415, Last Resort. Downing Street, Prime Minister's office. Prime Minister Asquith's office. After serving the coffee, the secretary withdrew. Only Prime Minister Asquith, Secretary of the Navy Churchill, Grand Fleet Commander Admiral John Jellicoe and Chief of Staff Lieutenant General David Beatty remained in the office. What the asterisk happened last night? Prime Minister Asquith asked, although his voice was still calm. However, anyone who is familiar with him can feel that this is a reason why he tried hard to suppress his anger. Originally, Prime Minister Asquith was very pessimistic about the future situation of the war, but at this juncture, the Royal Navy actually suffered heavy losses, and this naturally made him unacceptable. General, this was caused by our negligence. We never expected that the Germans would send submarines to sneak into Scapa Flow for a sneak attack. We have already begun to install anti-submarine equipment in important waterways of Scapa Flow. It is absolutely impossible for the German submarines to enter Scapa Flow again, Admiral John Jellicoe said. However, such an answer obviously cannot satisfy Prime Minister Asquith. After all, they had already paid an extremely heavy price under the sneak attack of the German submarine. Can the 5 damaged battleships catch up with our decisive battle with the Germans? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Your Excellency, if the decisive battle is held in 3 months, all 5 battleships can catch up. If it is held in 1 month, neither the Warspite nor the Warrior will be able to participate. If the decisive battle is held in the near future, then I'm afraid the 5 battleships won't be able to keep up. Admiral John Jellicoe replied bravely. Suddenly, Prime Minister Asquith's face turned as dark as the bottom of a pot. Originally, the Royal Navy's chances of winning were very small. This time, it lost 5 battleships, which will undoubtedly make the Royal Navy's chances of winning even smaller. It can even be said that there is no chance of winning. Such a result naturally made Prime Minister Asquith unacceptable. Although, when the Germans offered harsh conditions and refused to enter into peace talks with the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Asquith guessed that this would be the result. However, there is still a trace of luck in his heart. That is, the Royal Navy can perform extraordinary in naval battles and help the British Empire win a brilliant victory, just like the Trafalgar naval battle commanded by Marshal Nelson. But now, the German Navy has shattered his little hope with practical actions. Such a contrast naturally made Prime Minister Asquith somewhat unacceptable. If we have a decisive battle with the Germans in the near future, how likely is the Royal Navy to win? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Your Excellency, the chances of winning are very small. Right now, the Germans have too much of an advantage. If it is a decisive battle in the near future, we can even add the Agincourt. Canada and Ireland there are only 24 battleships. In terms of number, it is the same as the number of German battleships. However, in terms of combat power, it is much worse. The performance of German battleships has been learned through previous battles. We have arrived. We have to admit that their single ship performance is far stronger than ours. Therefore, our chances of winning are very small. Admiral John Jellicoe said. Your Excellency Churchill, what do you think? Prime Minister Asquith looked at Churchill. Your Excellency Prime Minister, judging from the current situation, the possibility of the Germans fighting us in the near future is very high. They will not let go of such a good opportunity. Churchill said. That is to say, are we doomed this time? Prime Minister Asquith couldn't help closing his eyes in pain. All the people were silent. Obviously, they also thought that this time there was probably no chance of winning. Your Excellency, I have a method that may turn our defeat into victory. Churchill said suddenly. Oh, what can I do? Prime Minister Asquith hurriedly asked. His expression seemed to be the last straw. Since the decisive battle between us and the Germans is inevitable, then I ask the Grand Fleet to destroy the German battleships as much as possible when they are in the decisive battle with the Germans. The more they are sunk, the better. All the battleships of the Grand Fleet will be sunk, and more than 80% of the German capital ships will be sunk. Churchill said. General John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty shuddered. From Churchill's words, they heard how cruel the future naval battle would be. If the combat mission given by Churchill is to be completed, then in future naval battles, the Grand Fleet is very likely to be wiped out in a decisive battle with the Germans. Of course, there is no guarantee that Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty will be able to cause greater losses to the Germans. Churchill, why? Prime Minister Asquith asked. He couldn't understand why Churchill would say that. Your Excellency, if the Grand Fleet can sink the German capital ships as much as possible, then our pre-dreadnought ships will be able to come in handy in the next battle. Even if all our capital ships are lost, there are still dozens of pre-dreadnought ships, which still have enough strength to fight the Germans again. Moreover, we will still have the advantage. No matter how bad it is, the German Navy, which suffered heavy losses, cannot continue to block us. We can obtain the resources we urgently need from North America and India, so that our follow-up capital ship construction plan can be carried out smoothly. In another 2 years, we will have enough capital ships to compete with the Germans for sea power. I believe that the sea power in the future will still belong to us, said Churchill. After hearing the plan, Prime Minister Asquith couldn't help but nodded. Although, this plan is very cruel, and all the warships of the Grand Fleet are going to fight the Germans desperately. However, listening to Churchill's introduction, it seems that there is also a good chance of winning. If you can win, it is naturally the best. Even if it will cost a lot of money, in the eyes of Prime Minister Asquith, it is totally worth it. General John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty were pale. Obviously, they were also shocked by Churchill's crazy battle plan. This is clearly to let them sacrifice themselves and strive for favorable conditions for the follow-up battle. However, at this time, can they still refuse? Admiral John Jellicoe took a deep breath and then said, Your Excellency Prime Minister, Your Excellency the Secretary of the Navy, the Grand Fleet will do its best to achieve this strategic goal. Chapter 416, Hero. On the night of March 13th, the German Navy, the Imperial Crown Prince Qin Tian, and the Minister of the Navy, Marshal Count Tirpitz, all stayed here. They are all waiting for news from Submarine U-037. His Royal Highness, count the time. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and the others have already arrived at Scupperflow, right? But, can they successfully sneak into the heavily guarded Scapa Flow? Marshal Count Tirpitz said to therefore, I'm still a little less confident. In his opinion, such a battle plan is really too risky. Well, the time is almost up. As for whether they can successfully sneak into Scapa Flow, it depends on the performance of Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and the others. It is God's will. This time the battle plan is indeed very risky. However, if it succeeds, it will definitely bring us a major victory, Qin Tian said. A submarine carrying torpedoes sneaked into Scapa Flow and fired torpedoes at the warships moored on the pier. It would undoubtedly be a sure thing. Even if the battleship of the British Navy cannot be sunk, it should not be a problem if it is severely damaged. In this case, the German Navy will gain a greater advantage in the next decisive battle. As for whether Lieutenant Colonel Donitz will succeed, Qin Tian doesn't know. He knew that in the early days of World War II, a German submarine successfully did it. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz's ability is beyond doubt. The performance of the U-200 submarine will not be worse than that of the U-boat during World War II. More importantly, the British's underwater defense in Scapa Flow will not be stronger than during World War II. From this point of view, Lieutenant Colonel Donitz's U-037 submarine is still very likely to succeed. In addition, Donitz was also a famous person in another time and space. He was the commander of the submarine force of the Third Reich. His personal ability is naturally very prominent. Therefore, Qin Tian also believed that he would not die in Scapa Flow so short-lived. Your Highness, I hope they can succeed. If they can successfully sneak into Scapa Flow and severely damage one or two capital ships of the British Navy, this will be a great victory, Marshal Count Tirpitz said with a smile. Your Excellency, Marshal, if they are successful, I think their results should be much more than that. After all, if a submarine attacks a battleship moored at the dock, the hit rate is almost guaranteed, Qin Tian said with a smile. During the chat between Qin Tian and Marshal Earl Tirpitz, time passed slowly. Soon, it was dawn. But there was still no news, which made Qin Tian and Marshal Count Tirpitz even more anxious. Your Highness, our intelligence agencies have mobilized all their strength, and I believe there will be news soon. Marshal Count Tirpitz said. Well, maybe Donitz and the others are still avoiding the pursuit of the British, that's why they didn't send back the news in time. This may be good news. Only when the British suffered heavy losses, they would chase Donitz crazily. School them, Qin Tian said. Qin Tian's guess is correct. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and U-037 submarine are indeed avoiding the pursuit of British destroyers. When they evacuated Scapa Flow, because the battery was about to run out, they could no longer continue to dive. Therefore, the U-037 submarine had to take the risk of going up and recharging the submarine with diesel engines. However, before their batteries were fully charged, they encountered a British destroyer. This made the U-037 submarine have to dive urgently to avoid it. It's just that the tragedy is that the destroyer seems to have discovered the U-037 submarine, and after crazily catching up, it immediately began to drop depth charges. This made the U-037 submarine have to dive as far as possible to avoid those depth charges. The destroyer of the British Navy left after raging for a long time. The U-037 submarine escaped unharmed. If the British destroyers continued to attack and dive, maybe they would really be sunk. After resurfacing, the U-037 submarine began to return. It's just that, in order to avoid the British destroyers, they had already run far away. The radio station carried by the submarine was also damaged, making it impossible for them to report the specific situation to the country, so they could only find a way to return to the country first. This is also the reason why neither the Ministry of the Navy nor Qin Tian was able to receive the news in time. German intelligence agencies have been operating at full capacity since March 14 to collect intelligence on Scapa Flow. Last night, the flames of Scapa Flow were soaring into the sky, and there were constant explosions, which naturally could not be hidden from people living nearby. As the home port of the British Navy's large fleet, Scapa Flow is naturally the focus of German intelligence agencies. In the afternoon of the same day, the German intelligence agency learned the relevant news. Scapa Flow was attacked by a German submarine last night, and 5 battleships of the British Navy fleet anchored here were severely damaged. Your Highness, Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and the others succeeded. They severely damaged 5 battleships of the British Navy, including elite battleships such as the Battleship Warrior and the Battleship Warrior. We will win the next naval battle. Marshal Earl Tirpitz smiled. Although there is no capital ship that can sink the British, it is pretty good to be able to cause heavy damage to it. At least, the 5 battleships will not be able to participate in the next decisive battle. This will make our advantage further in the next battle. Our chances of winning will be even greater. Qin Tian was also very happy. However, is there any news about Lieutenant Colonel Donitz? Qin Tian asked. Your Highness, not yet. However, I believe that they will return safely. Marshal Count Tirpitz said. Qin Tian nodded, and didn't he say much? As long as Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and their U-037 submarine are not sunk, they will definitely be able to return. Qin Tian also had great confidence in them, knowing that on the evening of March 16th, Lieutenant Colonel Donitz and the U-037 submarine returned to Wilhelmshaven. When their submarine sailed into Wilhelmshaven, all the warships whistled to welcome them. After receiving the news, Qin Tian, who came specially from Berlin, Marshal Count Tirpitz, Admiral Reinhard Scheer, commander of the High Seas Fleet, and Lieutenant General Franz von Hipper, Chief of Staff, all welcomed them to the pier. There is no doubt that Lieutenant Colonel Donitz, who sneaked into Scapa Flow alone and severely damaged 5 battleships of the Royal Navy, and the entire crew of the U-037 submarine, have now become heroes of the entire Germany. Lieutenant Colonel Donitz was later promoted to Captain of the Navy. Chapter 417. The time is ripe. Tirpitz, you did a great job. I never thought that a single submarine could seriously damage 5 British battleships. William II smiled all over his face. When the Navy formed a submarine force, William II was not very optimistic. After all, submarines can only hide underwater and launch torpedoes, which are far less powerful than surface warships. However, as the war progressed, the role of submarines has also emerged. During the battle, the British Navy was very embarrassed. This also surprised William II a little. However, at that time, he believed that submarines would at best play a very strong role in combat. But now, when a submarine faces a large surface warship, it also shows a strong attack power. A small submarine actually severely damaged 5 battleships of the British Navy, which shocked William II very much. He also knew that he underestimated the submarine's attack power. Yes, Your Majesty, the power of submarines has indeed far exceeded our expectations. The Empire has such powerful submarines and excellent submarine soldiers, which will make the Imperial Navy even stronger. Marshal Count Tirpitz said. King William II nodded in satisfaction. Qin Tian smiled and said nothing. This was only part of the power displayed by the submarine. Of course, due to the current technological conditions, many performances of submarines cannot be realized. Though submarines of later generations can be regarded as real underwater killers, the current submarine is nothing more than a boat that can dive. Donitz is a talent. We have to reuse that kind of talent. William II continued. Yes, Father. Donitz has now been promoted to colonel in an exceptional way. Next, he will hold a more important position in the Empire submarine force. Qin Tian said. Well, that's right. Now the British Navy has been severely damaged by us. Can we start the decisive battle with them? William II asked eagerly. According to their combat plan, the Navy will fight the British Navy first, and then it will be the Army's turn to fight the British and French allied forces. Seeing that it is already mid-March, it has entered spring. If time drags on, half of the year has passed. Your Majesty, we have finished our preparations. Now, it is indeed time for a decisive battle with the British Navy. The battleships they have been severely damaged, cannot be repaired without more than a month. Therefore, it is now our decisive battle with them, the best time to do so, said Marshal Count Tirpitz. He is also very excited. The German Imperial Navy has been waiting for this day for a long time. It has been more than 20 years since the development of the German Navy. The goal is set was to challenge the Royal Navy and pull the British from the throne of maritime supremacy. Judging from the current situation, they are undoubtedly close to achieving this strategic goal. So, we will win this battle, right? William II asked. Your Majesty, the Imperial Navy now has a great advantage in terms of capital ships. Therefore, our chances of winning are very high. Marshal Earl Tirpitz seemed very confident. In terms of capital ships, the British Navy now has 5 Revenge-class battleships, 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, 1 King George V-class battleship, 3 Orion-class battleships, and 1 Giant-class battleships, 3 Street Vincent-class battleships, 3 Belleau-Feng-class battleships, and 1 Dreadnought battleship. In addition, the British also detained without authorization the ships built for the Ottoman Turkish Empire and the Republic of Chile. The battleships are the battleship Agincourt, the battleship Ireland and the battleship Canada. In total, the British Navy has only 23 battleships. In terms of battle cruisers, they only have 1 left Tiger battle cruiser, 2 Lion-class battle cruisers, 1 Indefatigable-class battle cruiser and 2 Invincible-class battle cruisers. There are only 6 ships in total, which is only equivalent to the battle cruisers of the Imperial Navy. It is only half of the cruisers. Therefore, whether it is in the number or performance of capital ships, the Imperial Navy has an absolute advantage. As long as the British Navy dares to go to sea to fight, then we have absolute confidence to defeat them. What's more, the Imperial Navy in this battle, the Navy will also use secret weapons to ensure that the British Navy will be defeated in one fell swoop. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said. Secret weapon? What is that? William II asked. After the German Navy became stronger, William II's attention to the Navy has decreased. In addition, the German Navy deliberately kept the aircraft carrier secret, so Wilhelm II did not know the specific situation. Father, the aircraft carrier we built has completed training and can be put into actual combat. Although the current carrier-based aircraft can only carry light aviation torpedoes, their power is limited. But if they are hit consecutively, they can still penetrate the main force of the British. What's more, the capital ships of the British Navy have always been known for their weak armor. Even light aviation torpedoes have a high chance of penetrating their armor. Qin Tian said. Well, if this is the case, then our chances of winning will be even greater. William II was very satisfied. Yes, Your Majesty. The Imperial Navy will win this battle, and no one can prevent us from winning. Unless it is God. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said confidently. God has abandoned the British, and he will not care about the life and death of the British. William II said. Haha. Both Qin Tian and Marshal Count Tirpitz couldn't help laughing. Indeed, judging from the current situation, God seems to have really abandoned the British. Otherwise, the British would not have been suppressed so miserably. However, Father, the biggest problem now is that, if the British avoid fighting instead of fighting, we may have to use some means to force them out. Qin Tian said. Oh. What are you going to do? William II asked. We use capital ships to bombard the coastal cities of the British, especially their shipyards, which will become the primary target of our attack. In this case, I'm afraid that some civilian casualties will inevitably be caused. This is for the reputation of the empire. I'm afraid it will have some impact. Qin Tian said. William II thought for a while, and then said, it doesn't matter, you go ahead and do it. As long as you can defeat the British, and kill some civilians, what does it matter? What's more, who told the British not to go to sea to fight us? It's all what they asked for. Yes, Father. Qin Tian nodded. With the authorization of Wilhelm II, everything is even easier. Chapter 418, Battle Plan. March 16, 1915, Berlin, Admiralty. Imperial Crown Prince Qin Tian, Minister of the Navy Marshal Count Tirpitz, Chief of Naval Staff Marshal von Pohl, Commander of the High Seas Fleet Admiral Reinhard Scheer, Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Franz von Hipper, Lieutenant General Maximilian von Spee, Commander of the Breakthrough Fleet, all gathered in the Admiralty. Today, their task is to choose an effective combat plan from among the many combat plans. Everyone, the next battle will be a decisive battle between us and the British Royal Navy. This is directly related to whether we can defeat the British Navy and become the supremacy of the sea. For decades, the Imperial Navy has been preparing for this decisive battle. Now, the time is finally ripe. Qin Tian said, looking at a group of senior Navy generals. Indeed, in order to bring down the British Navy, the German Navy has been preparing for a long time. Especially after William II came to power, he unreservedly provided support to Marshal Earl Tirpitz. which made the German Navy begin to catch up with the British Navy. The emergence of Qin Tian made up for the shortcomings of the German Navy, allowing them to surpass the British Navy in just over 10 years. Through one naval battle after another, we have successfully gained an absolute advantage. Then, it is time for us to turn our advantage into victory. In this battle, the Empire will win. I hope everyone can understand this. Be confident. Qin Tian continued, Your Highness, everyone has been looking forward to such a day. I think, with such a big advantage, if we both lose the war, it would be too unreasonable. Of course, I also think that it is impossible for us to lose. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said. Others also expressed their opinions, thinking that this time the German Navy will definitely win. Everyone is full of confidence in this battle. General Scheer, has the specific combat plan for the High Seas Fleet been finalized this time? Qin Tian asked. His Royal Highness, after discussion, we have finalized the battle plan. 3 days later, that is, on March 19th, the main force of the Imperial Navy's High Seas Fleet will leave Wilhelmshaven and head straight for Scapa Flow. If the British, if people are brave enough to go to sea and fight us, it would be great. If the British dare not go to sea to fight, then we will force them to go to sea to fight. All capital ships of the Broken Fleet will return to cooperate with the High Seas Fleet in this battle. General Spee and General Hipper will each lead 6 battle cruisers. Among them, General Spee will lead the battle cruisers to attack the coastal cities in northern England, forcing the British Navy to go to sea for a decisive battle. General Hipper will lead the remaining 6 battle cruisers are closely monitored the movements of the British. After discovering the formation of the British battle cruisers, they will immediately attack and disable them. After the main force of the British Navy goes to sea to fight us, the High Seas Fleet will be in the North Sea. The final decisive battle with the British Navy. The battle cruiser formation will participate at the right time to attack the rear of the British Navy to ensure that the Imperial Navy can win this battle. In addition, the aircraft carrier of the Imperial Navy will also go to war, attack the British capital ship, and further weaken the strength of the British Navy. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. The battle plan chosen by the German Navy's High Seas Fleet is unremarkable. To put it bluntly, it is to use its powerful strength to directly crush the British. Their navy is no use of tricks or anything like that. Qin Tian quite agrees with this. After all, why is it necessary for the German Navy to use tactics when it has such a big advantage? With direct and strong strength, it can crush the British Navy. What if the British insist on avoiding war? Then we can't just wait like this? Asked Marshal von Pohl, Chief of Naval Staff. If the British still avoid war, then we will destroy all the coastal cities of the British from north to south. Even London will be bombarded. I believe that by then the Britain will never be able to shrink their heads again. Even if they want to continue shrinking, the British people will not allow it. Besides, if the coastal cities of Britain are destroyed by us, will the British still have the strength to continue this war? Reinhardt? Admiral Scheer said. The most important cities in the UK are mostly in the coastal areas. Even London is at the mouth of the Thames. As long as the main fleet of the German Navy knows the forts along the coast, it can directly bomb London with naval guns. Even its own capital was shelled. How can the British Navy shrink back? Besides, destroying all the shipyards along the coast can further weaken the war potential of the British Navy. Although, it seems to to destroy all the coastal cities in Britain. However, each of these generals knew that in order to win, no matter how high the price was, it was worth it. Let alone just turning enemy cities into ruins. Do you have any questions about this? Qin Tian asked. Your Highness, if too many civilians die, I'm afraid it won't be good. Marshal von Pohl said. It is true that, if too many civilians die, it will have a certain impact on the reputation of the Empire. However, compared to winning the war, even the damage to the reputation is worth it. Qin Tian said. Marshal von Bohr nodded, and said no more. He can also understand that, after all, Germany has made a lot of efforts for this victory. Now, it's finally time to win, so naturally they don't care so much. Everyone, in this battle, we must not only defeat the British, but also win the victory at the lowest possible cost. After all, our enemies are not only the British, the Americans on the other side of the ocean. Although they are forced by us, we retreated. However, that was only a temporary retreat. If we lose too much in the decisive battle with the British, they will definitely show up immediately. Qin Tian emphasized. Yes, Your Highness. Everyone nodded. The strength of the German Navy is stronger than that of the British Navy. However, the number of capital ships did not form an overwhelming advantage. Therefore, in this battle, the German Navy had better lose some capital ships. Otherwise, it will not be conducive to the consolidation of the German Navy's subsequent sea power. Defeating the British Navy was only the first step for the German Navy to seize sea power. Next, you have to subdue the navies of other countries. If there is a little carelessness, the sea power in hand may change unexpectedly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419, The Fleet Goes to Sea. On the evening of March 19, 1915, Wilhelmshaven Naval Base, Germany, Emperor William II of the Empire, Crown Prince Qin Tian, Prime Minister Bernhard von Bülow, Minister of the Imperial Navy Marshal Earl Tirpitz, Minister of the Imperial Army and Chief of the General Staff Feng Marshal Ken Hien. All the leaders and rulers of the empire gathered in Wilhelmshaven. Their purpose is only one, and that is to see off the Imperial Navy High Seas Fleet. This time, the Imperial Navy High Seas Fleet will go to the North Sea, looking for an opportunity to fight the British Navy. Whether Germany can pull Britain down from the throne of world hegemony in one fell swoop will be crucial. In the port, warships are ready to leave the port. The boiler was already burning and began to accumulate steam. Officers and soldiers in white Navy uniforms lined up on the deck. This moment is an extremely important day for the entire German Navy. Because, starting today, they will make history anew. Officers and soldiers of the Imperial Navy, I'm your Emperor. You are about to go to a decisive battle with the British Navy for the German Empire. I sincerely wish you victory in this battle. The Imperial Navy has developed to the present. Using it has been decades. Before, we have been suppressed by the British. Now, we finally have the strength to challenge the British. I believe that God will bless us. The German Empire will win. William II said to the officers and soldiers of the Imperial Navy's High Seas Fleet announced their plans. As the top power in the world, Germany has always been dissatisfied with what happened to itself. Because Germany was unified in 1870, by the time they rise, the world has already been divided up by Britain, France and other countries. Therefore, Germany has great strength, but has acquired very few colonies. This does not match Germany's strength at all. Therefore, Germany has always wanted to redivide the world through war. Of course, this is also of great benefit to ordinary citizens. If Germany can win the war, the country can gain huge benefits. People's lives will also be improved as a result. Therefore, the German people also support Germany in this battle. This also made the soldiers participate in this battle with great enthusiasm. They also hope to pass this battle and gain glory. William II's speech came to an end soon. The officers and soldiers of the Imperial Navy burst into cheers. Long live your majesty. The German Empire will win. As the strength of the German Navy became stronger and stronger, it repeatedly defeated the Royal Navy, which made the officers and soldiers of the German Navy more and more confident in this naval battle. Almost all naval officers and soldiers believed that they would definitely be able to win this battle. The expedition ceremony ended soon, and the warships of the High Seas Fleet began to sail out of the naval port and into the North Sea in accordance with the scheduled formation. At this moment, the sun is sinking into the sea. The afterglow of the setting sun, sprinkled on these warships, is very spectacular and shocking. These ships of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet were grouped because of the large number. The first battleship squadron is composed of 5 Bavarian-class battleships. Admiral Reinhard Scheer is also the commander of this squadron. The second battleship squadron, consisting of 5 King-class battleships, was commanded by Rear Admiral Schmidt. The third battleship squadron consists of 5 Caesar-class battleships, commanded by Rear Admiral Engelhardt. The fourth battleship squadron consists of 5 Helgoland-class battleships, commanded by Rear Admiral Maufu. The 5th Battleship Squadron consists of 4 Nassau-class battleships, with Rear Admiral Burdig as the commander. The 1st Battlecruiser Squadron consists of 3 Mackensen-class battleships and 3 Blücher-class battleships, with Lieutenant General Hipper as the commander. The 2nd Battlecruiser Detachment consists of 3 Derfliner-class battleships and 3 Moltke-class battlecruisers, with Lieutenant General Speer as the commander. In addition to capital ships, there are several cruiser units, destroyer units and so on. Of course, as the main force of the fleet and the decisive force in this naval battle, it is still the main fleet composed of battleships and battlecruisers. Cruisers and destroyers, more in this battle, are responsible for detection and protection tasks. When necessary, they can also launch lightning strikes to attack the enemy fleet. The naval guns of these small and medium-sized warships do not pose any threat to capital ships. However, the heavy torpedoes they carry can pose a fatal threat to capital ships. The active ships of the High Seas Fleet this time, if all the large and small ships are added together, there are more than 120 ships, which is much more than in another time and space. Of course, the total number is less than that of the British Navy's large fleet. Although the Royal Navy suffered heavy losses in many naval battles, but a lean camel is bigger than a horse. The foundation of the Royal Navy still exists. In addition, in terms of small and medium-sized warships, the British Navy undoubtedly has an advantage. Of course, this is only a numerical advantage. In terms of performance, the existence of Qin Tian, a guy who is similar to cheating, has greatly improved the performance of not only the capital ships of the German Navy, but also the performance of these small and medium-sized warships. Therefore, although the Royal Navy has an advantage in numbers, but if they really want to fight, they can't take any advantage at all. After the High Seas Fleet left Wilhelmshaven, the 2 aircraft carriers of the German Navy, which were secret weapons, also set off. They passed through the Kiel Canal, arrived in Wilhelmshaven, and sailed into the North Sea under the cover of night. On the 2 aircraft carriers, a total of 24 fighter jets and 72 torpedo planes were carried. Although, such power may not play a big role in this naval battle. However, this is the first time an aircraft carrier has participated in actual combat. When everyone's eyes were still on capital ships like battleships and battlecruisers, Qin Tian had already regarded the aircraft carrier as the future development direction of the Navy. The movement of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet has always been valued by people. All countries are paying attention. Although, it was already evening when the High Seas Fleet set out to sea. Germany's intelligence agencies have also stepped up secrecy measures. However, the news that the German High Seas Fleet left the port in large numbers was still known. Suddenly, all countries in the world became tense. They know that there will be a battle between Britain and Germany to determine who is the hegemony of the sea. Chapter 420. The decisive battle is coming. Late at night on March 19th, London, England, Downing Street Prime Minister's office. Prime Minister Asquith's office was filled with smoke, and a group of British cabinet ministers were smoking cigars and frowning. Your Excellency Churchill, has the information been confirmed? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Yes, Your Excellency Prime Minister, it has been confirmed. All the main warships of the Germans have left Wilhelmshaven a few hours ago. I think the Germans are coming for us. Churchill said. Your Excellency Prime Minister, it seems that the Germans are more eager than we expected. They clearly want to defeat the Royal Navy in the shortest possible time, and then defeat the British and French allied forces to completely win this war. Foreign Secretary Edward said Segre. The longer the war drags on, the greater the price the Germans will pay in the war. Therefore, they don't want the war to drag on. Lloyd George, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, also said, obviously, the current situation is very unfavorable to Britain. The German Navy's aggressive departure from port must be a decisive departure battle with the Royal Navy. This also means that the German Navy is sure of victory. Otherwise, the German Navy would not be so eager for a decisive battle. Of course, this is very unfavorable for the British Navy. Everyone, what should we do now? Are we going to let the Royal Navy go to sea to fight the Germans? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Although, once they have a decisive battle with the German Navy, they have no chance of winning at all. However, if luck is good and everything can develop in their favor, there may still be a slight chance of winning. Your Excellency, Prime Minister, I will immediately give an order to the Royal Navy to prepare them for a decisive battle with the Germans. However, I personally think that we should wait a little longer. Wait until the Germans are exposed. After all, our strength far inferior to the Germans, Churchill said. Prime Minister Asquith nodded. It's up to you professionals to be responsible for how to fight. The hope of the British Empire rests on you. I hope that in this battle, the Royal Navy can do its best, fight for a victory for the British Empire. This is the last chance for the British Empire. If the Royal Navy is defeated, then the battle will inevitably ignite on the British mainland. Unless they are willing to surrender to the Germans immediately after the defeat of the Royal Navy. Otherwise, the German army will definitely plan to conduct a landing operation on the British mainland. It is impossible for Britain to surrender to Germany, especially in the last contact. Germany offered conditions that they could not accept. If they accept the conditions proposed by Germany, Britain will become a small third-rate country, which is definitely not acceptable to them. Britain has been the world's hegemon for hundreds of years, and neither the king nor the subjects will allow such a situation to happen. Unless they are really completely defeated by the Germans, they will accept the reality when there is no other way. People are like this. They will not die until the Yellow River. As long as there is still a glimmer of hope, they will try their best to fight for it. Although, such hope is very slim. Your Excellency, the Royal Navy will definitely do its best to win the victory. Churchill looked determined. Although, he knew that it would be very difficult to win. However, this is their mission, and they will do their best to win. Everyone, it is time for the life and death of the British Empire. I hope God can bless the British Empire and get through this crisis safely. Prime Minister Asquith said. God bless the British Empire. Empire. Everyone said. Everyone's expression is very serious. Their fate has long been tied to the British Empire. If the British Empire were defeated, or even destroyed, they would quickly go from a group of powerful people to penniless people. Scapa Flow, the home port of the Royal Navy Grand Fleet. The defense here is now much stronger than when it was attacked by a submarine of the German Navy. Under the water, anti-submarine nets were also deployed urgently. It is almost impossible for the submarines of the German Navy to sneak into it without anyone noticing. However, the atmosphere of the entire Grand Fleet is very dignified. The officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy seem to be able to feel that as the strength of the Royal Navy is getting more and more damaged, the day when the German Navy will launch a decisive battle against them is getting closer and closer. If it is said that they still regard themselves as the number one in the world before, then now, the officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy have become more and more tense. Although the decisive battle has not yet begun, they seem to have been able to guess the ending. That is, in the fierce battle, they will be defeated by the German Navy. The Royal Navy will not only lose the world's number one throne, they will also likely lose their lives in battle. As the commander of the Grand Fleet, Admiral John Jellicoe and Chief of Staff Lieutenant General David Beatty, the pressure on their shoulders was also very great, especially after learning about his plan from Churchill. In order to give the British Empire Navy a chance to turn defeat into victory, Churchill actually demanded that the Grand Fleet fight to the end. Even if it was sunk, it was not allowed to retreat, and the German Navy's warships had to be sunk as much as possible. This also makes them know that once a decisive battle breaks out, unless they are lucky and win, otherwise, what awaits them is all killed in battle. Such a result was too cruel for them. Your Excellency Commander, Your Excellency Chief of Staff, a telegram from the Ministry of the Navy. The communications officer reported to them. General John Jellicoe took the telegram and looked at it, and his face immediately became very ugly. What's the matter, Your Excellency, Commander? David? Betty Lieutenant General asked. The main force of the German Navy has all gone to sea, and the target is most likely us. It seems that the decisive battle between us and the Germans is coming soon. Admiral John Jellicoe sighed. Oh, Your Excellency, Commander, the Germans will not waste their chances. It seems that we are in serious trouble this time. However, there will be such a day sooner or later, and we cannot hide. We can only do our best to fight, for the Empire is fighting for a chance. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Admiral John Jellicoe nodded. Order the fleet to prepare for battle at the port. After Churchill's order is issued, we will immediately fight the Germans. Yes, General. Lieutenant General David Beatty nodded. Chapter 421, Persecution. On the afternoon of March 20th, 1915, a huge fleet was cruising at a low speed in the waters 200 kilometers southeast of the Orkney Islands. The center of the fleet is the heavily guarded battleships. On the periphery, there are cruisers and destroyers. Even in this sea area, there are still many submarines. After the German Navy was determined to launch a decisive battle against the British Navy, the German Navy began to shrink its strength as much as possible. Not only the surface battleships have completed the assembly, but also the underwater submarines are densely scattered in the North Sea. These submarines can not only carry out sneak attacks on the surface warships of the British Navy, more importantly, they can form an intelligence network. As soon as the main force of the British Navy leaves the military port, they will soon be discovered by these submarines, and then report to the flagship, to prepare the fleet, to deal with the British Navy. Of course, the seaplanes carried by large warships will also become the main force for detecting the enemy's situation in this naval battle point on the battleship Bavaria, the flagship of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet. Admiral Reinhard Scheer, Lieutenant General Franz von Hipper and Lieutenant General Maximilian von Spee discussing the current situation have a discussion. There is no doubt that our fleet left Wilhelmshaven last night. The British will not be unaware of this. However, judging from the information obtained so far, the main force of the Royal Navy is still staying in Scapa Flow. Very obviously, they don't plan to have a decisive battle with us. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said, the purpose of the German Navy's battle is to completely defeat the British Royal Navy. If the main force of the Royal Navy has been huddled in Scapa Flow, this will make it impossible to achieve the strategic goals of the German Navy. Your Excellency, Commander, can you confirm that the main force of the Royal Navy is staying in Scapa Flow? Lieutenant General Hipper asked. After all, it is impossible for the British not to know that the German Navy left the port with such great fanfare. It would be too disappointing if they were indifferent to this. After all, they were the former sea overlords. So far, do you even have the courage to fight the German Navy? No matter how you look at it, the possibility of this will be very small. It has been determined that the main force of the British is still staying in Scapa Flow. We have deployed more than one submarine in the important waterways around Scapa Flow. In addition, we have also sent seaplanes to fly over Scapa Flow. It is concluded that the main force of the British is still staying in the port. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said, it seems that the British are frightened by us, and they dare not go to sea to fight with us anymore. The former maritime overlord is nothing more than that now. Lieutenant General Spee said disdainfully. Admirals Reinhard Scheer and Admiral Hipper nodded again and again. They also believed that the Royal Navy was really scared by them this time. Facing the powerful German Navy, the British Royal Navy thought it had no chance of winning. Under such circumstances, he had no choice but to avoid fighting point. However, the British have been hiding in Scapa Flow like this. Is there no way? Maybe our headquarters will directly attack Scapa Flow. In that case, it will be just as the British want. Lieutenant General Hipper said. Scapa Flow, as the home port of the British Navy's large fleet, is also an important base for blocking Germany. Over the years, the United Kingdom has piled up resources there. The entire Scapa Flow is almost surrounded by coastal defense guns, and the defense is extremely strong. Even if the High Seas Fleet has dozens of battleships, if they launch an attack, they may not be able to take advantage of it. What's more, there are 20 or 30 battleships of the British Navy in Scapa Flow. Once a war starts, those capital ships can also berth in the port and attack directly with naval guns. At that time, the German Navy may not only be unable to defeat the British Navy, but will also suffer a big defeat. As for sending a submarine to carry out a sneak attack again, that won't work either. The last time the British suffered such a big loss, they will definitely strengthen Scapa Flow's underwater defenses. It is no longer possible for the submarines of the German Navy to easily enter Scapa Flow. Gentlemen, since the British avoid fighting, it is impossible for us to spend time with them like this. The huge fleet is performing missions at sea, and the fuel burned every day is an astronomical figure. What's more, for this in one operation, we also transferred the main force of the breaking fleet. This caused a big loophole in our blockade against the British. The British will definitely seize this opportunity and frantically transport all kinds of weapons to their homeland. materials. Therefore, it cannot be delayed any longer. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Lieutenant General Hipper and Lieutenant General Spee nodded again and again. The German Navy's previous blockade of the British mainland was undoubtedly very successful. Not only did Britain's industry suffer a devastating blow, but it also greatly weakened Britain's war potential. It even caused many social problems. If the blockade becomes useless, because the main force of the fleet is transferred, it will make all previous efforts in vain. Your Excellency, Commander, it seems that there is no other way. The British will not go to sea to fight, so we have to find a way to force them out. Let's act according to the predetermined plan. Lieutenant General Spee said. General Spee, according to the predetermined plan, the 2nd Battle Cruiser Detachment you lead is going to attack the British coastal cities in order to force the British to go to sea to fight. In this case, it will damage your personal reputation. It will have a big impact, Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Lieutenant General Spee smiled slightly. Your Excellency, as long as the Empire can win this war, there will be no problem with my personal reputation at all. Admiral Reinhard Scheer nodded. Indeed, not only Lieutenant General Spee, but other generals would never shrink back when encountering such a thing. Personal reputation is indeed very important. However, in comparison, winning the war for the Empire is the most important thing. As a soldier of the German Empire, for the benefit of the Empire, he would even give his life, not to mention his personal reputation. Well, let's act according to the scheduled plan. General Spee, you lead the 2nd Battle Cruiser Detachment to set off this evening, launch an attack on Edinburgh and destroy it. Especially the port and shipyard must be completely destroyed. Let the British know that, if they avoid fighting again, we will destroy all their coastal cities. Admiral Reinhard Scheer ordered. Yes, General. Lieutenant General Spee nodded. Subsequently, Lieutenant General Spee led the 2nd Battle Cruiser Detachment to set off. Chapter 422, Shelling. The 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron of the German Navy not only has 6 battle cruisers, but also 4 light cruisers and 6 destroyers. This kind of strength is already very good. With the strength of the battle cruisers of the German Navy, as long as they do not encounter the main force of the British Navy, there is almost no danger. What's more, the 2nd Battle Cruiser Detachment also includes 3 Derfflinger class battle cruisers. The performance of this class of battle cruisers has long been tested in actual combat. Its 380mm main gun with 50 times the caliber has extremely powerful armor-piercing capabilities. No capital ship in active service in the British Navy can resist it. On the battleship Derfflinger, the flagship of the 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron, Lieutenant General Spee looked serious. Although, this task is not a difficult task at all for the 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron he leads. However, attacking the ports and shipyards of a big city would inevitably cause many innocent casualties, which made him feel a sense of guilt. As an aristocrat of the German Empire, doing so made him somewhat uncomfortable. I did this for the German Empire, and for the Empire to win the war. In addition, the British are also to blame. They are already in this war, and have no chance of winning. But they still insist on refusing to surrender, want to continue the war. That's why we had to adopt such a method. All of this was caused by the British themselves. If they want to blame there. Lieutenant General Spee secretly said in his heart think. After thinking about this, he felt a little better government. People are often like this. As long as they find a reason, they will no longer be afraid of the condemnation of conscience. The 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron of the German Navy headed straight for Edinburgh. At the moment, the British know nothing about it. The main force of the Royal Navy's large fleet is all huddled in Scapa Flow, except for a small number of light warships conducting reconnaissance. The rest of the warships are hiding in the port and dare not go out to fight at all. They also seem to realize that if they go to sea to fight the German Navy, they must lose. Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, is the largest city in northern England. Here, it is not only the political and economic center of northern England, but also an industrial center. The chemical industry and shipyards are very well developed. The large shipyards here even have the ability to build battleships. However, for the sake of safety, the British Navy generally places the construction of battleships in the southern shipyards. The defense of the south is undoubtedly better than that of the north. On the evening of the 20th, the workers in the Edinburgh port area all got off work. The major shipyards are continuing to work overtime. Of course, what they built was not a warship, but a merchant ship. Under the attack of German submarines and the breakaway fleet, British merchant ships suffered great losses. In order to restore Britain's maritime capacity, they had to build a large number of merchant ships. This situation changed only after the German Navy's blockade was completely completed, and in order to save resources to build warships, the major shipyards can no longer get new orders for merchant ships. They only need to finish the existing orders. Of course, this also means that many shipyard workers will lose their jobs as a result. It's just that, because of the blockade of the German Navy in the whole of Britain, their industrial products cannot be shipped out at all. Therefore, many factories have stopped except for factories related to the military industry. Many other workers have lost their jobs. These people live entirely on government relief. Of course, the British Army also took the opportunity to absorb a large number of young and middle-aged men into the army. Greatly solved the problem of insufficient soldiers. In the case of not having enough to eat, many people are naturally willing to join the army they despised before. Damn it, this battle has been going on for more than half a year. When will it end? I never want to live through such a hard life. A worker in a shipyard received his bread after get off work, cursing go home. Now in the UK, prices are soaring, and the pound is not worth much. The wages of the workers are distributed directly in bread. Of course, workers are also happy to accept this kind of wages. The food on the market has begun to be in short supply. Even if you have money, you may not be able to buy it. Okay, Jack, don't complain. At least we still have jobs, and our family can still live because of it. Compared with those beggars who starve to death on the streets, it is already much better, an older worker said. Indeed, the British economy is very bad now. After many workers lose their jobs, they have no way to find a job again, which makes many people become beggars. Since everyone has no extra food, naturally there will be no kind-hearted people to give them alms. This has caused many British cities to starve to death every day. In a big city like Edinburgh, more than 100 people starve to death every day. Jack couldn't help but nodded when he heard such words. Indeed, although their lives were a little bit harder, they still wouldn't starve to death. Compared with the corpses that were transported out by the corpse truck every morning, they were considered luckier. May God bless the British Empire and win this **** war as soon as possible. Jack couldn't help praying. Boom. Suddenly, an earth-shattering explosion sounded. Jack and the others couldn't help being stunned. Afterwards, dense explosions sounded continuously. It's from the direction of the port. Jack's expression changed involuntarily. Quick, let's go see what's going on. They came to a high ground with a view of the port and witnessed a disaster in progress. On the sea, several huge battleships like hills were firing at Edinburgh. Huge shells exploded in the port, the flames collided, and the smoke and dust shot straight into the sky. Buildings in the port were destroyed one after another. Countless people are running for their lives in all directions. My God. Our shipyards are hit. Damn Germans. Our shipyard is just a shipyard that produces civilian merchant ships. Won't they let it go? Jack cursed. If the shipyard is destroyed, it means that they will lose their jobs immediately. Their jobs' lives will immediately become unreliable, and they may even follow in the footsteps of beggars who were starved to death. The faces of those who worked in the shipyard like Jack turned pale. Boom. 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 Explosions continued to come. The German warships were firing violently, and the port of Edinburgh was turning into ruins at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 423, Condemned Germany. The battlecruiser Derfflinger, with 3 triple-mounted 50 caliber 380mm main guns, is firing. Each salvo can 8 MASH high explosive bombs weighing 1 ton to the port of Edinburgh inside. After each shell exploded, it caused huge damage to the sea and inside the port. One after another buildings were destroyed in the explosion. Huge bomb craters one after another are densely covered in the port. Run away. Countless British people fled in all directions. Boom. A shell fell from the sky and exploded among the crowd. After the shell exploded, it left a huge crater in the ground. As for the British, they have all disappeared. It is estimated that it has been blown into powder. The 6 battlecruisers of the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron of the German Navy are firing fiercely. With their powerful firepower, the port of Edinburgh was turned into ruins. In the face of the fierce German shelling, the defenders of Edinburgh did not fight back at all. Although, the United Kingdom built coastal defense shells and deployed coastal defense troops in Edinburgh. However, the old coastal defense guns have limited range. In the face of those advanced battleships with a range of more than 20 kilometers, they are often powerless and can only watch the German warships destroy their ports. On the bridge of the battlecruiser Der Flieger, Lieutenant General Maximilian von Spee watched this scene with a blank expression, watching the fleet of the German Navy destroying the port of Edinburgh with artillery fire. Although he knew that these fierce artillery fires would definitely cause great casualties to the British, and even civilians would die in the artillery fire. However, this is war, and everything is so cruel. Be careful, the British may have submarines in this sea area. All warships are activated, and the British submarines cannot be given any chance. Lieutenant General Spee ordered. The British Navy is also equipped with a lot of submarines. Although, the performance of their submarines is far from being comparable to that of the German Navy. However, once it is out of reach and attacked by a submarine of the British Navy, the German Navy will also pay a considerable price for it. Yes, General. The communications officer immediately issued Lieutenant General Spee's order to the ships. The 6 battle cruisers, even during the bombardment, still kept their speed above 10 knots to ensure that they would not be easily locked by enemy submarines. The light cruisers and destroyers on the periphery are constantly cruising around, looking for suspicious targets. When sonar had not been invented, anti-submarine was undoubtedly very difficult. The 2nd battle cruiser squadron of the German Navy ravaged the port of Edinburgh with artillery fire for nearly an hour before evacuating swaggeringly. At this time, the port of Edinburgh has been completely destroyed. The entire port has been turned into ruins. The wharves were bombed to pieces, a large number of factories were destroyed, and a raging fire was burning. General, the port of Edinburgh has been destroyed by us. A staff officer reported to Lieutenant General Spee. Order the fleet, retreat. Tonight, we will launch shelling on the next target, until the main force of the British is forced out of Scapa Flow. Lieutenant General Spee ordered. Yes, General. The 2nd target chosen by the 2nd battle cruiser squadron was Dundee at the mouth of the River Tay. It is also one of the important cities in Scotland. Together with Glasgow in the west of Scotland, it can be called the largest cities in Scotland. I hope the British will be more sensible this time and send their navy out to fight us. Otherwise, our bombardment can only continue forever. Lieutenant General Spee said. The task of attacking British cities with powerful warships was not what he wanted. He even hopes to be able to fight the British Navy in an upright manner. That would make him feel like a soldier, not a butcher. Edinburgh was heavily bombarded by the German Navy and was immediately reported to the British cabinet. Prime Minister Asquith was having dinner when Home Secretary McKenna reported the situation to Prime Minister Asquith. However, after he heard the news, he immediately lost his appetite. God damn Germans, are they going to slaughter our civilians? How can they be so despicable and shameless? Prime Minister Asquith cursed. Although, in war, civilian casualties will inevitably be caused. After all, human life is especially fragile at this moment. However, this was the first time that the German Navy had openly bombarded a British port. Call other cabinet members immediately to discuss this issue. Prime Minister Asquith ordered. The secretary of the Prime Minister's office went to make a call immediately. Soon, a group of cabinet ministers gathered in the Prime Minister's office. However, everyone's faces were very ugly. On the way here, they all knew about the attack on Edinburgh. Tell me, what should we do now? The Germans have launched shelling on our port. Today is Edinburgh. Will it be London's turn tomorrow? Prime Minister Asquith was very angry. Your Excellency, the Prime Minister, we should condemn the massacre of civilians by the 3 Germans. Let the whole world see the true face of the Germans and win the sympathy and support of the international community. Sir Edward Grey, Foreign Secretary, said. Prime Minister Asquith couldn't help but twitched the corners of his mouth. When does the British Empire need to win the sympathy of the international community? But who made them weak now? Let's leave this matter to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. No matter what, we must expose the despicable and shameless behavior of the Germans. Prime Minister Asquith said. Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister. Sir Edward Grey nodded him. Your Excellency, the Germans did this purely to force the main force of the Royal Navy to go to sea to fight a decisive battle with them, Churchill said. Prime Minister Asquith nodded. That is to say, if we don't send the Navy to fight them decisively, will their attacks continue? Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister. Churchill nodded. Is the Royal Navy ready for battle? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Yes, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister. The Royal Navy is ready to fight and can go to sea to fight at any time, Churchill said. If this is the case, then order the Royal Navy to go to sea to fight. This battle cannot be avoided, and there is no need to hide any longer. Prime Minister Asquith made a decision. Chapter 424, Courage of the Royal Navy. After the cabinet meeting, Churchill answered the Admiralty. Prime Minister Asquith has made a decision to order the Royal Navy to go to sea to fight the German Navy. Therefore, Churchill had no other choice but to follow this order. However, Churchill did not think that now is the best reality. It's just that the German Navy chose to shell German coastal cities to force the Royal Navy to go to sea to fight, which made it impossible for the Royal Navy to shrink back. Otherwise, the Germans might really destroy all the coastal cities of Britain. In that case, there would be no need to continue this battle. After the coastal cities were destroyed, Britain could not hold on at all. More importantly, British shipyards are all located in coastal areas. Once these shipyards are destroyed, Britain will have no strength to continue the war. Even, there is no possibility of a comeback. Send a telegram to the Grand Fleet and tell them the news that Edinburgh has been shelled. In addition, tell them that the Prime Minister has issued an order to ask them to go to sea and fight the Germans. I hope they can act according to the plan and serve the Germans. The British Empire is fighting for a chance, Churchill said to the secretary. Yes, sir. The secretary immediately went to send a telegram. The despicable Germans, have they tried their best to defeat the British Empire? God bless the British Empire, and must win this naval battle. Churchill secretly prayed to God. In the situation where the disparity in strength is too great and the odds of winning are too small, praying to God and praying for victory has become their only way. Of course, this is just a kind of spiritual sustenance. Scapa Flow, Royal Navy Grand Fleet Headquarters. Even though it was late at night, the headquarters was still brightly lit. The German Navy has already left port, which puts great pressure on the Grand Fleet, because they know that the target of the German Navy is them. If they don't do it well, they will lose completely in the next naval battle. At the same time, it will also cause the British Empire to suffer defeat for this. Is there any news about the Germans? Admiral John Jellicoe asked. Your Excellency, not yet. However, what is certain is that the German fleet may not be too far away from Scapa Flow. This afternoon, their reconnaissance plane just passed over Scapa Flow. Day Lieutenant General Wade Beatty said. It seems that the **** Germans are trying to block us here. If we go out to sea, we will definitely bump into them. Admiral John Jellicoe couldn't help cursing. The German Navy's tactics of overwhelming them left them with no room for extra play. General, an urgent telegram from London. A communications officer hurried in. General John Jellicoe hastily accepted the telegram. After reading the telegram, his face had turned as hen. Damn the Germans, they are too despicable. John Jellicoe Admiral cursed. What's wrong? Your Excellency Commander. David? Betty Lieutenant General asked. Tonight, the Germans attacked Edinburgh. The entire port of Edinburgh was reduced to ruins. Not only were the shipyards destroyed, but at least thousands of civilians were killed by the German bombardment. John Admiral Jellicoe said. What? Damn Germans, how dare they do that? Aren't they afraid of being condemned by the whole world? Lieutenant General David Betty was taken aback for a moment, and then became furious. The Germans have used everything to defeat us. How could they be afraid of condemnation? That will have no impact on them at all. Admiral John Jellicoe said. Damn it, if we can defeat the Germans, I will definitely lead the fleet to destroy all the coastal cities of the Germans. Lieutenant General David Beatty said through gritted teeth. It's just that both he and John Jellicoe knew that it would be very slim. Your Excellency, does London have any other requirements? Lieutenant General David Beatty asked. Your Excellency, the Prime Minister has issued an order asking us to go to sea to fight the Germans and prevent the Germans from further attacking our coastal cities. Your Excellency, Churchill asked us to carry out operations according to the original plan and destroy as many German warships as possible. Follow-up actions create opportunity, Admiral John Jellicoe said. It seems that this battle between us and the Germans is inevitable. They can't let us continue to hide in the military port. And after they start shelling our coastal cities, it's impossible for us to hide anymore, Lieutenant General David Beatty said. General John Jellicoe nodded. The current situation is indeed like this. Give orders to the ships. After 2 hours, all the warships will go to sea and fight the Germans. Admiral John Jellicoe ordered. Yes, Your Excellency, Commander. However, I think that this order, Your Excellency, should be issued to all officers and soldiers through a tweeter. And by the way, tell them that the Germans shelled Edinburgh to arouse everyone's anger. In the case of excitement, perhaps, the fleet's strength can be displayed beyond normal. Then, maybe there will be a miracle, Lieutenant General David Beatty said. John. Admiral Jellicoe know that David Beatty is not willing to give up any chance of winning. Of course, doing so is also very beneficial to the Royal Navy. If they can defeat the German Navy with their strength, that would be the best. Half an hour later, Admiral John Jellicoe, like all officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy Grand Fleet, delivered a speech through the radio. Seamen of the British Empire, I now have to tell you sad news. This evening, the Germans sent a fleet to bombard Edinburgh, destroying the entire port and causing a large number of civilian casualties. The Germans did exactly that, in order to force us to go to sea and fight them. If we don't go to sea, they will definitely continue to bombard our coastal cities. By then, more cities will be destroyed by the Germans, and more people will die under the Germans during the shelling. Although, our strength may not be as good as the Germans, but we can no longer sit still. We must stand up and fight the Germans. This is a duty. Even if he was killed by the Germans because of this, he would not hesitate. I believe that all the officers and men of the Royal Navy are warriors, not cowards. The words of Admiral John Jellicoe reached the ears of every soldier in the Grand Fleet through the radio. Suddenly, the entire fleet erupted with great courage and will to fight. Chapter 425. The decisive battle begins. Late at night on March 20th, Scapa Flow was brightly lit. Large searchlights illuminate the entire Scapa Flow. The officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy, inspired by Admiral John Jellicoe's speech, drove one after another warships out of the waterway of Scapa Flow and into the North Sea in order. Although, the number of capital ships of the Royal Navy is no longer as good as that of the German Navy, and the performance of a single ship cannot be compared with that of the German Navy. However, they still believe that they can win this naval battle. These ships of the Royal Navy Grand Fleet were reorganized. Among them, the battleships formed a number of battleship squadrons, including the 1st Battleship Squadron consisting of 5 Revenge-class battleships, the 2nd Battleship Squadron consisting of 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, King George V 3rd Battleship Squadron consisting of battleships and 3 Orion-class battleships, the Battleship Hercules, the 2nd ship of the Giant-class battleship, together with the battleships Agincourt, Island and Canada, formed the 4th Battleship Division. The 5th Battleship Squadron composed of 3 Street, Vincent-class battleships and 3 Belle-Feng-class battleships moored at Wick. The remaining 6 battlecruisers formed the Battlecruiser Squadron. In addition to these capital ships, the Royal Navy also dispatched a large number of cruisers and destroyers, bringing the total size of their fleet to more than 150 ships, about 30 more than the German Navy's High Seas Fleet. Of course, no matter how many of these small and medium warships there are, it is difficult to have a fundamental impact on the battle situation. What really determines the outcome of a sea battle depends on the duel between battleships, which is the most important thing. General Beatty, you lead the battlecruiser detachment and set off first to prevent the German battlecruiser formation from attacking our coastal cities again. If possible, it is best to defeat them. Admiral John Jellicoe ordered. Yes, General. However, this may be very difficult. Even if the Germans' 12 battlecruisers did not act together, if there were only half of them, we would not be able to defeat them. Of course, I will try my best to hold them back. David? Lieutenant General Beatty said. General Betty, I plan to assign the 2nd Battleship Detachment to your command. With the strength of 3 Queen Elizabeth class battleships and 6 battle cruisers, if you encounter a German battle cruiser detachment, you should have a strength of 1. Fight. As long as the Germans don't gather all the battle cruisers, there should be a chance of winning. Admiral John Jellicoe said. David? Betty Lieutenant General's eyes flashed a gleam of joy. If he is asked to use 6 battle cruisers to deal with the 12 battle cruisers of the German Navy, then naturally there is no chance of winning. Not to mention that the number has doubled. Even the performance of a single ship, the battle cruisers of the British Navy, are far from being comparable to the battle cruisers of the German Navy. Under such circumstances, Lieutenant General David Betty's ending is naturally conceivable. However, if there are 3 more Queen Elizabeth class battleships, the situation may be different. Queen Elizabeth class battleship is the most powerful first-class battleship in the Royal Navy. Of course, it cannot be compared with the battleships of the same level of the German Navy, but it should still be able to deal with battle cruisers. As Admiral John Jellicoe said, as long as it does not encounter all 12 battle cruisers of the German Navy, the 6 battle cruisers of the British Navy plus the 3 Queen Elizabeth class battleships are undoubtedly very important odds of winning. Your Excellency, Commander, why did you change your plan? Lieutenant General David Beatty asked. Previously, Admiral John Jellicoe's plan was to let Lieutenant General David Beatty entangle the battle cruisers of the German Navy, and then the battleship formation led by him would have a decisive battle with the battleship formation of the German Navy, to fight for as many ships as possible, sinking some of the German battleships. The German sneak attack caused us to lose 2 Queen Elizabeth class battleships, 1 Orion class battleship, 1 Giant class battleship and the Neptune battleship. Our battleship formation suffered heavy losses. If we use the battleship formation to confront the German battleship formation, we definitely have no chance of winning. At that time, it will be ugly to lose. Therefore, I decided to let you fight the German battlecruiser formation first. With the help of 3 Queen Elizabeth class battleships, it may be possible to defeat the German battlecruiser formation. In this case, we will not be completely at a disadvantage. Anyway, whether it is the German battleships or battlecruisers, it needs to be sunk. Just do your best to sink these battleships. Admiral John Jellicoe said. Yes, General, I will do my best to fight this battle. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. He knew that Admiral John Jellicoe had put all his hopes of victory on him. It was precisely because of this that he felt how heavy the responsibility on his shoulders was. Admiral John Jellicoe nodded. For the sake of the British Empire, we have no way out this time. We must fight to the death. Even if we die in battle, the Germans must pay a sufficient price. David? Lieutenant General Betty also nodded heavily. Although, they all think that Churchill's plan is too ruthless. However, they all know that this is the only chance. If the large fleet can cause enough casualties to the German Navy, then Britain still has a chance to turn defeat into victory in this battle. Otherwise, Britain would have no chance at all. Although, the British Navy left Scapa Flow in the middle of the night. However, it also did not escape the pursuit of the German Navy. After the British Navy's large fleet had just left Scapa Flow and started heading south, a submarine surfaced. Information about the British Navy's large fleet leaving Scapa Flow immediately played a role in the Admiralty. The Ministry of the Navy immediately sent this information to the High Seas Fleet. The British are finally dispatched. Then, the decisive battle between us and the British is about to begin. The German Imperial Navy is destined to step on the corpse of the British Royal Navy and ascend to the throne of sea supremacy. Rear Admiral Teshire is full of confidence in this naval battle. He believed that with such a large advantage, the victory must belong to them. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.